Hello, everyone. Welcome to Real Talk with a Vulnerable Angel and Friends. I am your vulnerable angel, your host, Dominica May. And tonight, my guest is my friend Sharad, a writer from Kuala Lumpur. Welcome, Sharad.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Um, we are just the two of us tonight because, well, Mike was going to join us as he usually does, but something important came up, which very understandable. If he decides he wants to talk about it next time, then he can, but I'm not going to. It's a personal thing, so I won't go into it in case it's a private thing. So, oh my goodness, I unplugged my lights by mistake. Playing with the cords underneath me. There we go. That's my fidgeting with my autistic fidgeting with my feet. So what this live stream is about is we just have deep and vulnerable conversations and open up about what's going on with our lives and some of our past. We ask questions and hopefully it inspires other people to get more open and vulnerable with people in their lives as well. So, how are you doing, Sharad? Do you want to have any, updates briefly before?
I don't know. Where do I start? Well, it was my birthday yesterday or today, depending on what time it is. So
Happy birthday! You didn't say anything. I don't pay attention
fine.
to updates about that sort of thing on social media. So
No,
I
you're
had no
fine.
idea.
It's fine, Nick. Yeah, but it was a busy one in terms of getting a lot of errands done, which is good. I went to TGI Fridays, which was a lot of fun for dinner. Haven't done that in I feel like 5-6 years, so that was good fun. Yeah, just chilled out. Been busy looking after my dog. He's not feeling great, so I've been taking him to the vet for his daily checkups. But hopefully he's getting better. So
Doing better
fingers and
than
toes
last
crossed.
week?
Yeah, he's doing much better. I think from what I understand, I was speaking to the vet this morning, and she was saying, following today, from now on, we'll have to take him every other day. So he's definitely getting better. So I'm just like,
That's
so
good.
that's good.
So does that make you 39 now? I remember last week you said you were 38. Look, okay. So I know
Yeah.
last week I said, I posted a video on social media asking people to guess how old I was. Nobody commented. I was like, come on, guys. But I'm older than you, Sharad. I'm 41. So don't.
You look a lot younger. You look at least half my age. So yeah.
I know I do.
Yeah.
That's what I took. One of the things I talked about, and I think it was the last stream that I know I look a lot younger than I am. That's why I can get away with the whole schoolgirl shtick as well, which you may have noticed I am wearing tonight. So this came about because over the last couple of days, I ended up posting a couple of clips of me doing stand-up in my schoolgirl outfit. This is one of them. This is my original schoolgirl outfit.
The OG.
The OG one. So if anyone watched my reel or my short on YouTube of me doing stand-up in Malaysia for the first time, this was the same top that I wore in that. Still have it today. I got it in a Korean fashion shop in Sunway Pyramid in Malaysia.
Cool.
I'm just like, this looks great. So I got it. But then the other clip that I shared, which was the day before that, I was wearing this one.
Oh, I remember that. That's the anime otaku one, isn't it?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
But I think I got it from the same shop. So technically still Korean fashion, I guess. But
do you ever wear that just out and about, just during the day?
No, it's only ever for. Well, I don't know what I would attract. Okay, so here's an interesting thing for me is I have mixed feelings about the results of the two videos that I shared over the last couple of days because they, in terms of views that I got for those videos on YouTube, there's
pretty good.
It's so high, numbers that I would never expect to get on anything. Because the other shorts that I've posted on YouTube were a handful, less than less than 30 views. I think 22 views was the highest that I had for any short before that on YouTube. And then just using the word schoolgirl in the title of the first one, over 500 views in like the first 30 minutes or
hacked the
whatever.
algorithm, I think. Yeah, you've broken the algorithm. Well done.
So I was like so shocked about it that I posted about it on Facebook, and one of my friends replied that I needed to use Schoolgirl Angel discusses toxic masculinity as the title for something.
Sure, go for it.
I'm like, okay, I'm going to combine those two things for my next stream. So that's what I'm doing.
Nice.
We'll see what happens. Maybe there'll be something that comes up that I can clip together and post as a reel later.
Nice.
If you want to discuss toxic masculinity with me.
You're the perfect person to speak to about it. I think, yeah.
So that's a possibility. But then the other clip, I went for white anime schoolgirl attempts stand-up comedy in Malaysia. I think that's what the title was.
Yeah.
So like additional like keywords, I guess. And then I used the hashtag stand-up as well. And it's sitting at just under 2.6 thousand views now, and I'm just
nice. Look at you. That's awesome.
What on earth? Now, granted, it's had like almost 50% likes to dislikes, so 7 likes to 6 dislikes. I was like, that's I guess I'm getting more engagement.
Yeah, I was about to say,
but
there's no such thing as bad press is still good press.
So, but I have mixed feelings about it because it's like, I don't know if I want to lean into that. Like looking at the demographics data, which I've never been able to do for like any of my other videos because I don't have that number of views, right? Mm-hmm. It's like quite a high portion of male viewers versus female viewers and things like that. I'm like, yeah, that's what I expected. But it's interesting to compare with TikTok and Instagram because the number of views is comparable to my other videos that I've shared on both of those platforms. So it hasn't made any difference whatsoever for using the same terms.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and the TikTok viewers are more female than male. So
okay,
make of that what you will. Maybe there's just more female users of TikTok. I don't know.
It's I think because we're no longer like the new hip generation, as it were. But it's interesting because I've got some clients. I do freelance work, and some of my clients I have on retainer. I'll go see them, and some of my clients. The smart thing is they get interns straight from the relevant colleges. And lovely kids, and I'll meet them, and they'll show me all these things they do, and they're amazing. But they every single one of them's on TikTok and Insta, and they have all these links. They know what to do and tags, and I'm just like, you feel your age. Put it that way.
Yeah, I probably need one of those kinds of interns. My kids are not into social media, so my daughter is Gen Z, but like on the younger end. So she's just become an adult. And my son is Gen Alpha. But they're not into social media. They use Discord. But my son uses Discord just to chat to his local friends. Right. My daughter, I think, connects with more other people around the world. But they don't use social media. So my kids are not of that kind of social media generation. It's very interesting.
Not of that ilk.
Yeah. I don't know if I wonder, there's part of me that wonders if it's because they grew up watching me and their dad like on our phones all the time, and they decided that it was unhealthy. So they didn't want to take part of that sort of thing.
Well, I mean, it's no different to us seeing our parents do obsess over something, and we're just like, no. Or
Yeah.
I mean, it can be something as menial as like playing a particular game or watching a particular sport to something hardcore like always starting arguments or toxic behavior. Whatever it is, we see, like obviously we see that we're just like not for me, Satan, not today. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that seems to be something that would happen across different generations. Like things, negative impacts that you've had on your life. You're like, I don't want to emanate that, so I'm going to do something different.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but then there's the positive things, like, oh, okay, that was good, so I'm going to continue that sort of thing. My son, he's 14, and he had like what's called a presentation of learning at his school this past week, which was him talking about everything that he'd learned in the first semester of his first year of high school,
Right.
and his growth and that sort of thing. And one of the things that he talked about was he has been more open and vulnerable now, and I'm like, I feel like that's my influence because I've
Good.
been doing a good job of,
Good.
because going back to just the comment about toxic masculinity, I've known of this term for a very long time, and being afraid that my son could grow up with being influenced by toxic masculinity, I've kind of part of my parenting has been to try and prevent him from being influenced by those kinds of toxic influences. So when he's willing to be open and vulnerable, even with me, like things that he's talked to me about things that I never would have dreamed to talk to my parents about, right? And I won't go into detail because that's his private stuff. But I'm just like, wow, I feel it's one of the things that makes me feel like I've done a good job at being a parent.
Good.
And that's been hard for me to accept, I guess, because when I was married, my ex-husband disparaged my parenting a lot. Like he would talk about me being a bad mother or whatever because I didn't do specific things that he thought that I should do. But I always cared first and foremost about my children's mental health. And everything else kind of was secondary to that. And so the fact that my kids still want to spend time doing things with me. I watch anime with my daughter, and
Nice.
I still have some influence over the kinds of things that they are interested in. They have their own interests as well, but I think that speaks volumes for what kind of parent I've been.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, makes me glad that they are not around their dad as much, because I do not think he would have been as good of an influence on them.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
When I was going through my divorce, one of the things that I was thinking about as my ex-husband was writing stuff in his paperwork that he filed with the court complaining about what a bad mother I was like, I feel like this is just a projection. You recognize that you are a bad parent, but you don't want to admit that you are, so you're going to put all of that blame on me instead.
That's usually how it works. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah. Anytime, anyone who's watching, anytime that you feel like somebody is trying to insult you, first hold up a mirror to them and see if it seems like what they're saying to you is actually a reflection of them.
It's a lot more commonplace than you'd think.
It is.
Yeah.
I know that's a thing that I struggle with sometimes, like with, am I just getting upset with this person because they're showing me a part of me that I don't like about myself?
Maybe that's a good point.
Sometimes that's how it is. So, yeah. Well, do you want to talk about any of like your perspective on toxic masculinity stuff, or you want me to jump to a question?
No. I mean, it's a good point. Like, well, I mean, I mean, in my experience, toxic masculinity is something that really kind of brews when you're a teenager, maybe until your early 20s. That's when you're really being influenced either by your peers or your immediate elders. And there have been times, I mean, the obvious thing is be a man, you know, no emotion, take control. And that's something that was pushed on me when I was younger, both in Malaysia and in England, where I grew up in. Different variations, I would say. I think in Malaysia, it was more in terms of academics and socials, whereas in England, it was more, like they put me in a boarding house where it was just all athletes and all of the top scholars as well. So amazing guys, amazing guys. Don't get me wrong. And I'm very, very happy they put me there. But these guys were all, I'm not joking. When my parents came to visit, they're like, Jesus Christ. Like my dad's like, why is this guy like got 6 abs? And why is that guy like 7 foot tall? I'm just like, I don't know. And then this me is going, but in a way it was good because I was in my best shape. Then I didn't have a 6-pack, unfortunately, but I lost so much weight. I was really social. I was playing games. My grades were high. So it really depends. Sometimes you kind of need a little bit of not a little bit of a push to get you going, but at the same time it can be a double-edged sword because the best way I can think of it in terms of toxicness is if someone explained this to me is all right. The color blue, do not think of the color blue. Whatever you're thinking of, do not think of blue. Blue. I'm feeling blue. Don't think of blue. Going on and on. And by the way, what color is your pen?
Green.
And if you say, okay, right. And but you know what I mean.
I know.
It's all this going on. There's only so much you can filter out. So it's very tricky.
Yeah. No, that's like when you're going through a breakup and you're just like, don't think of my ex, don't think of my ex. And then that's all you can think about because you're just like, but no, that's interesting because I would be more likely to think that if you're in that kind of environment or surrounded by these like top athletes and stuff, that you'd feel more intimidated rather than inspired. But I guess it probably depends on your personal disposition as well, right? Would you say?
Right. I mean, yeah, definitely. I mean, there was some, especially in my house, some that kind of shrunk back, maybe a handful. But at the same time, it's difficult because if you're surrounded by all these brilliant minds who are passionate about exercise and whatever, their routine becomes your routine. You know, it's little things like that. Like for example, like. The early one, the best one I can think of is the head of my house. He was the cross country coach. So what does he do? At least once a semester, he would set the alarm off around 3 or 4 a.m. All of us would have to rush out, and we're all in our, PJs, all exhausted. And he said, "All right, lads, let's do a 1-hour run," and we'd run. And this is in the freezing cold, like November, December, January in nearby London, so it's freezing. And but we just did it. And it was a good work ethic. And I had to admit, like it was fantastic because I was in the best shape of my life, and it had this sense of instillment. So it depends. There were times where, let's say, for example, like you think it would go one way, too toxic. But at the same time, they were very, very understanding. Like if, let's say, I was hurt or I wasn't feeling up for it, they're like, "Don't worry, bud." I mean, they were really smart about it. They were always like, "What's the point? You're just going to injure yourself and miss more time. Just take a day." So, and this is circa 2002 to 2004. So that was pretty good. And I think because of my education leaning towards more of the liberal arts, writing, and English, thankfully I didn't have to encounter too much toxicity. That kind of stuff really kind of affected me more so when I got into the work culture. That's that's when it really kind of kicked in. But it's just one of those things where I mean, nowadays people are a lot more aware of it. But I can imagine, in different parts of the world, and years before. It must have been awful. I can only imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've got Zisu joining us, so I'll just bring up his comment here. Thank you again for joining us.
Hey, buddy.
Feel free to ask us any questions that you would like us to answer. Yeah, I think that really says a lot about the people you surround yourself with, right? You have to be really careful about who you surround yourself. If you surround yourself with a bunch of losers or really toxic people, then you kind of become that yourself because that's what you're surrounding yourself with. Versus if you surround yourself with inspiring people, then you can feel more inspired to work harder and do better because you have like another standard to kind of live up to. It's like, oh, my friend is achieving this. Maybe that means that I'm also capable of achieving this, especially if there's someone that wants me in their life. Not everyone can do that. I think if you have low self-esteem, for example, it can be harder to feel like you're capable of living up to the same kind of level that those people are. But if you have the right kind of motivation, so it's like a mixed bag depending on what your experience is like. I've probably been on both sides of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you want to talk about in terms of toxicity?
Well, I'm thinking of just off the top of my head at the moment is the times where there has maybe been an improv group that has found some success that I was like very jealous of because I was like, I didn't really like their style necessarily, but obviously, they were doing well. And I was, there's a part of me that's like, but why are they doing so well and, getting all popular and stuff, and I'm not able to, achieve the same kinds of successes. And but I think in the end, it ended up being one of the things that inspired me to push harder at doing my own sorts of things to be able to achieve the things that I wanted to do. So like I wanted to travel to festivals and perform at festivals, and the group that I was performing with at the time, there were there were some members of the group who either didn't want to travel to different festivals or they couldn't afford to, or whatever. And so I had to kind of figure out, well, if I'm not going to be able to do that with this group, then what else can I do? What kind of show can I produce that will get me into festivals? And that's what my So You Want a Job improv show came about as a result of that, because I really wanted to travel to the Hawaii Improv Festival, for example, which is where I met Mike. I wanted to do an actual show there rather than just going as a solo performer. And yeah, and so I think like it was my third show of that I recorded and submitted for the festival and got accepted. So
Nice.
it's just a case of making the right kinds of plans and knowing how to kind of do something that is authentic to you as well. Like that show was very much authentic to me. This is what I want to do. I feel good about this, and I'm working with people that I enjoy. I can't do the like just play to Mark or play to the algorithm if it's on social media. Like
We're
clearly,
we're not at that stage yet.
Clearly I managed a little bit this past week, but I wasn't. That was an experiment for me. I had no idea what was actually going to happen because I wasn't used to having.
Of course you weren't.
500 to 2,500 views. Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe if I show a bit of cleavage, maybe we might like pop things up a little more. So we'll see.
Well,
Well,
no. Okay, so that note just reminded me of this top is actually a little bit tight on me, and I have been concerned that like I might pop a button.
You don't say.
The tie is here, so at least
sport.
At least if a button pops, that like it's not actually going to reveal anything. That was actually the reason that I switched to the other schoolgirl top when I started using the other one in stand up, was because I got pregnant. after I started doing stand-up in Malaysia. So I got pregnant with my son, and I was like, oh, I don't think I can fit into this outfit anymore because my belly was getting too big. So, but the other one, so this one, it's
Yeah, oh, that's lovely.
it's more like stretchy, so I could wear it with and still kind of hide my belly and get away with still looking
That's really
kind of
cute.
like a schoolgirl.
Yeah.
So that's what I wear when I'm too fat to wear this one.
I feel you on that one. I feel you on that one.
Or if I don't feel like ironing this one. So I'd not been wearing this one for the when I wanted to do the schoolgirl outfit thing for my stand-up recently, because my ironing board was covered with things and I couldn't be bothered clearing it off. But I want to wear this one today, and it's like, yeah, no, I really need to iron
Not
it.
today. Not
No,
today.
I did iron it today. So
Okay, good.
there's no wrinkles.
Ooh, very fancy.
I actually did something.
All toasty. Very nice.
Oh yes, well, for a little while. I did have to put my central heating on for a little while.
Oh dear.
It's chilly in my house.
Oh,
And
that's nice.
my thermostat, it's winter. It's my
That's
thermostat just
that.
like went to 64 Fahrenheit, because I
Ooh.
can't. I hate that it's in Fahrenheit, but I'm an
Yeah.
American. Like I don't
Yeah.
know what that means in Celsius.
That's okay.
I just know it's cold. I know
Well, I
that
mean,
the good temperature is 72. That's what I like.
are you like? I mean, do you enjoy the cold or do you prefer the heat?
I prefer to be warmer. I don't know if maybe it's just because I got so used to living in Malaysia, right, where it's a
Yeah.
tropical climate, and a good 24 to 32 degrees Celsius year round. That's nice and pleasant. But here, like 22 is warm.
Right.
So I was like, that's where I can get out my leggings and my cute small tops. 22.
Actually, speaking of temperatures, like the other day, I got like, do you know whenever you're just working and you just go on a tangent in your head, like the little monkey in your head has the symbols and just starts doing that? I just got into this rabbit hole where I just got on YouTube and I saw this guy. I think he was in Siberia or North Russia, whichever one, and he's outside during the daytime and he's boiling this tin cup of hot water. And he takes it out, he tilts it, and instead of the water coming down, it evaporates straight away. That's how cold it is.
Wow.
And this is all in one shot, so there's no editing and
Yeah.
stuff. And you just see it, and I'm like, what the fuck? And that's what I want so badly because I love the cold.
You love the cold.
I love the cold. I was in St. Petersburg and Moscow when I was, I think I was 15 or 16. I think I was 15, 16. And I loved it. And I remember like the guy at the bus would always say, "All right, guys, whenever you're outside, if you're sitting down outside, don't sit down for longer than 30 seconds." And we're like, "Why?" And we were talking, we're kids. And later on that day, I think I was sat down talking to my friends, but I didn't move for like 2-3 minutes. And when I got up, it just felt like everything was on fire. And I just started crying and screaming. And they're like, "Oh my God, what's wrong? What's wrong?" Like, everything hurts. And the guide came around. She's like, "Yeah, it's because your limbs are frozen." And I was like, "I've only been sitting down for 2 minutes." And she's like, "Yep, sounds about right." Yeah. And I was fully decked out as well. So it's crazy.
So what is it about the cold that appeals to you, that makes you want to be in it?
I think more so now than ever. I think it has to do with my illness. Okay, so for the audience, I have an autoimmune disorder called Guillain-Barré syndrome, and part of the symptoms is that my body can't regulate my internal temperature, and unfortunately, usually what happens is you either go one way or the other way. You're always cold or you're always hot. Unfortunately, I went towards the always hot thing. So I remember my parents, bless their hearts, like they're always bitching about how high the air conditioning bill was, and we had to get like special ones included because I would just be like, as soon as I'd walk out, it would literally be just like as if I just got out of the shower. I'm just sweating nonstop. So it reminded me a lot of yeah. So if I would go back to Russia, I wouldn't need all those layers and Russian hat. I'll just walk around in a singlet and short shorts or flip flops, and I'll just be like. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
No, I thank you for answering that.
Yeah.
I was curious, but that makes a lot of sense. It makes me think about how another like symptom of autism is a similar sort of thing. So like my daughter can go out in like cold temperatures in just like shorts and a t-shirt because she's like, I'm like, are you sure you don't want to put like something else on? And she's like, I don't feel the temperature like you do. I'm like, okay.
It's tough, girl.
Yeah, but that's just that's one of those like I said, symptoms of autism. That's temperature regulation. It works differently in some autistic bodies. So yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Huh.
Just like pain receptors, like so it's a sensory issue, I think.
Right.
So some so there's difference in sensory processing. So some feelings might be more painful to an autistic person, some might be less painful. So remember, I don't remember which episode it was, but that it was when I talked about breaking my foot or fracturing my foot, and I did not react as strongly as people expected.
Yeah, now I remember.
Right?
Yeah. Now I remember. Yeah.
So again, our pain receptors work differently, I guess. That's making me wonder about the act of giving birth. Oh, and pain with that. I did not use any drugs. I didn't get
No
any.
epidurals at all.
I didn't get an epidural. I think I used a little bit of pethidine for one of my kids. I don't remember which one. But that's it. And so I guess
You're tough, bro.
I guess I handled the pain all right. So my reason for it was because I had heard that my mum didn't use any drugs when she gave birth. And I was like, I want to be tough like my mom. I don't want to do because I was like, in my teen years in the 90s, like there was very anti-drug messaging, right? And I took it to the extreme of like, I don't want, painkillers. I don't want prescription medication or anything as well. Like not just the illegal stuff. I want even prescription medication. I don't want to do that. So that's where I went. I was like, I'm not going to take anything for it. I don't want that stuff in my body.
My body, my temple, my choice.
Yeah, all of that. So, and then I found out after the fact, after giving birth without anything, that apparently my mum did use pethidine with me. I'm like, what? But still, no epidural.
You little snake.
No epidural. But so in some ways, I think it made me feel like I'm tougher than my mom because like comparing in that kind of way. I'm sure my dad will probably, if he watches this later, will leave a comment about that because he would have been there. And
would you do that again if hypothetically
I had another child?
Yeah, would you toss out? Would you just be like, hit me, bro?
No,
just hit me as much as you can.
I probably would, because I've toughed out so much at this point. I've lived through so much emotional abuse and trauma that's physical trauma.
That's not a good thing, Tommy.
No, I know.
You sound a bit of a masochist. You're like, come on, just hit me. Yeah.
Well, no, because you forget, like, it's that saying where the emotional scars stay with you longer than the physical scars.
Sure.
It's like that. I have no memory of how horrible the pain actually was giving birth to my children. No recollection. I mean, it's been 18 and 14 years at this point. It's been a long time. No memory of that. My kids would probably be very upset if I did have another child, because they're just like, no. I mean, that would be a huge age difference between them, right? But
Stranger things have happened, though.
I'm still capable of it. I mean, not right now, because I have
Yeah?
an implant birth control that's preventing me from being able to have children. No reason for me to still have it. I'm not like, I don't have a partner or anything. I did consider.
You're like a cyborg. That's awesome.
I did consider removing it. However,
No.
my thought was, and the reason I haven't is because if I do get a partner in the future, in Trump's America, I don't want to run the risk of being forced to bring a child to term if I don't actually want to have it.
Always thinking, Domi. That's what I like to hear. Always thinking.
That's my reason. So even though it has worse side effects for me than not being on it, I think it's better to be safe than sorry. Look, my dad is watching. So he says, I'm right. It was a last minute decision, almost too late. She was in labor. So my mum was in labor for over 24 hours. Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah. So my dad just came in.
Yeah. That's
a long time.
That I can't even imagine. That's
I think my first pregnancy, I was in labor for like 12 hours ish. And my second, it was like 6. It was much faster. And my contractions were like, so my water broke. And in the morning, I woke up and I was like, oh, I guess my water broke. Because that had not happened for my first pregnancy. So I had no idea of like what to do in that kind of situation. I was like, it was the morning, it was like 7 a.m. or whatever. I was like, I guess that probably means I'm giving birth today. But like, I didn't have any contractions yet. So I'm just like, well, I guess I just wait for the contractions to start, or like I wait for my my gynecologist, OBGYN's office to open. I'll go down and ask what I should do, because my OBGYN was in the same apartment complex that I lived in. So I was like, I'll just wait until they're open. I can just go downstairs and ask. And as soon as I went into the admin there, they're just like, oh my God, go to the hospital. And I'm like, but I don't have any contractions. Go to the hospital. I was like, oh, okay. So,
good thing you asked. So yeah,
I had no idea. So I guess I was in labor for a little while before when I should have gone. Like, that was fine. I still didn't get contractions for quite a while, and then I think it was like less than 4 hours to give birth from when my contractions did finally start. So very fast. Just
Thank
lucky,
goodness,
I guess.
right?
So like so fast that I probably wouldn't have been able to get any drugs for that one situation, you know?
You never know.
Well, in Malaysia it's different. I don't know. Yeah. So yeah, I'm a tough as nails, but
Apparently, yeah.
I think you're probably right. There's a bit of masochism in there. It's like I feel like I deserve the pain and punishment, probably.
And you're dressed like an angel, yeah.
With the stuff that I've endured over the years, it's like it was like I felt like I deserved that pain and that punishment, even when I didn't. So it took me, meeting people who didn't treat me that way to help me kind of overcome and realize that I didn't actually deserve that. I did deserve to be treated better. So that was one upside of being polyamorous, is I got to meet men who did treat me better, and I got to see that they were not all like my ex-husband.
Good.
All right, my dad's got another comment here. My brother was 12 hours labor, and my sister, I knew about my sister being born in the car on the way to the hospital, like so fast.
Jesus Christ, that's terrifying.
Such a funny story, though. And my parents kept that car for years afterwards.
Yeah, there must have been a hell of a deep clean.
You would think, right? It's like, do you
think so?
You really want to keep this car after you've like soiled it with bodily fluids from giving birth?
That must have been a hell of an interesting cleanup. I don't know whether your dad must have like sent it for cleaning or he did it himself.
Or... he can let us know in the chat there. I have no idea. I would have been 4 at the time, I guess, or almost 4, I think. Yeah, because I'm 4 years older than my sister, but my birthday's after her, so almost 4. So I have no recollection of any of this stuff. I wouldn't have been there anyway, but
right.
Yeah. Well, anything else related to any of that stuff before we jump into a question?
Nope. Let's go for the question.
All right, I'm going to pull one for. Okay, we're using our Skip the Small Talk card deck today.
Nice.
So I'm going to draw a question from somewhere in the middle of the deck. What are some things you loved about yourself as a child that are still true of you today?
I think the obvious one is I'm very easy to get along with. I love, well, let me rephrase this. I don't love people. That's a lie. But I love communicating with people. I think, yeah, like I'm like, it doesn't matter where you're from, what status of life, etc., you're from. I just like, I'm very, very easy to get along with. And that's something that I've carried with me. And yeah, so it's just one of those, it's just one of those things. I'm just an easy person to get along with. A lot of people have told me that to a fault. I mean, in a good and a bad way, that I'm very approachable. I'm good fun, and I'm just good around people. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah, that's good. But do you have boundaries? Because that's the thing. Is like when you're likable, sometimes it means that you lack boundaries.
Not really. I mean, like I'm pretty good with setting boundaries with my friends, which is good. I've got trouble setting boundaries with family. I think that would be the main one. But I think because with family, particularly your immediate family, sometimes you don't. How do I phrase this? You don't really have an option in terms of what you can and can't do. Whereas with friends, it's just take it or leave it, right? Or a stranger, just take it or leave it. So, yeah, I mean, it's like having boundaries is a must, and I've realized that as we get older, that's becoming even more and more important.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I asked that because I have definitely struggled with boundaries over the years, both in respecting other people's boundaries because I didn't know what boundaries were, and identifying and expressing my own boundaries because I didn't know what boundaries were.
But
and
you
then
do now. That's important.
and then feeling like I was obligated to do things because of a particular relationship. Whatever it was, whether, there were a lot of things where my ex-husband crossed my boundaries because I thought that's what I was supposed to accept in a romantic relationship. Oh no, you're supposed to do these things that your partner wants you to do to show that you love them, rather than standing up for yourself. It's like, actually, I don't want to do that. So like one of the reasons that our marriage kind of got rocky in some places was those moments where I did try to stand up for myself and set boundaries, because he was not used to me doing that. And he's like, no, you're supposed to do the thing that I want you to do, because otherwise you don't love me. Very, very abusive phrase. Is like, if you love me, you would do this. That is,
bro, I married you. What more do you want?
Whereas I wanted to have, like, I want to be in a relationship where I choose to be in it, not feel like I'm forced to stay in it because I don't have another option, or I'm financially dependent on you, or whatever, which is what a lot of my marriage was. I was financially dependent on him because I was a stay-at-home mum for so long. I felt like I've just been thinking about this over the past week since our last stream. Is I felt like he stole my youth from me. He stole all those years that I could have been working and building a career. He stole all of that from me. So that was very hard. And I feel like I'm still grappling with that today. Why is this, like, I've grown since then, but I'm still, as I'm struggling to find work now because I'm unemployed, feel like I'm reverting to that anger of, man, it would be easier for me if I had more work history doing these things, which I could have had he not stolen those years from me, and where I was a stay-at-home mum.
It can be tricky, but put it this way: through every negative experience, I always believe there's something positive that comes out of it. The good thing is, it's like it's made you the person you are today.
I always try to.
And,
yeah, I do try to do that. Think about, well, what is it that what is the positive that I'm getting out of this situation? I mean, my kids are amazing, so I would not have my kids had it not been for that relationship. But I can still feel like my youth was stolen from me.
I mean, the best thing I can say about that is it's very difficult to live in what ifs, because you'll just be spinning and spinning, like,
I don't live in those what ifs, but I can still be angry about it. Like I feel like because if we don't feel our feelings through, then I'm more likely to get stuck there if I kind of push it aside, right? Which is what I have a habit of doing with my feelings. If they're too hard for me to process, I'll just like try to compartmentalize it, put it aside. Same thing that my mum did. I think I talked about this many streams ago, that I felt like it was one of the things that caused my mum's cancer, was the fact that she bottled up her emotions and didn't talk about them. So that's why I try to do more to actually express what it is that I'm feeling. I don't need to express it necessarily to the person that is impacting me to have those feelings. And I phrase it that way because I don't want to blame the other person necessarily. I'm not saying it's their fault that I'm having those feelings. It's an impact of their actions mixed with my past experiences and stuff as well. So I still get to choose how I react, but the feelings in the moment are there and coming from somewhere.
Yeah.
So
I think that the best advice I can really share is something that I got recently, actually. Before, it was, you can't control other people. Only thing you can do is control yourself. And I know that's easier said than done, because if that's the case, like blah blah blah. But at the same time, it's, if you're only human. Obviously, you'll be affected by the way people speak to you, the way people treat you and behave around you. But you can only control yourself. You're not a member of the X-Men. You can't physically control them or mentally control them. And as much as tempting as it is, and even though you can educate them and share your feelings, which is very, very important, at the same time, you can't expect them to do a full 180. It's the same thing if they have an issue with you, for example. Let's say they go, Dominica, I think that you're spending too much time singing and not enough time playing the piano. Right? I mean, obviously, then you can just go, okay, maybe I'll delegate time, but do you know what I mean? It's all about you and how you want to express yourself.
Oh yeah,
So,
and it is a case of shifting your mindset sometimes as well, because it's very easy for us to get into the blame game where we're blaming other people for the way that we're feeling, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, when I first moved to California, and I was very angry about having to move to California because I wanted to stay in Malaysia. I had all these reasons why I wanted to stay in Malaysia.
Malaysia's great. Malaysia's fantastic.
I was very unhappy. I was very depressed and upset with my now ex-husband, but my then husband. And I was blaming him for a lot of what I was feeling. I was blaming him for my depression. Now, granted, in hindsight, there was, you know, all the emotional abuse stuff that was impacting me. But what I decided to do, rather than I tried to shift my mindset. I was like, you know what? I'm not going to blame him for my feelings anymore. I'm going to decide and figure out what it is that I need to do to make myself happy so I can feel more like myself and get myself out of this depression that I was experiencing at the time. And so I did. That was one of the reasons I got into improv, and that was a thing that got
That's
me out of
awesome.
it, right? And that helped me become more myself. It helped me, you know, I was on medication for depression at the time, and it helped me get out of, you know, coming off the medication. And yeah, and then things were pretty good, but my being autistic, once I get a new interest, I dive into that interest and I want to spend all my time on it because I was like, this is the thing that's making me happy. I want to like get super invested in it. And
Sure.
so my ex-husband was not happy with the fact that I was spending all this time on this new interest because he felt like I was neglecting him and his needs. And I'm like, well, you can do other things to, you know, like I invited him to join me on this journey and do these things with me because it was something that I was enjoying and I was happy to share it with him. But he, in his mind, it was like, you're taking away the you that I want you to be. You're not being the you that I want you to be. And so like he was putting all that blame on me rather than shifting his own mindset as well to adapt to my changes. So yeah, there's it's an interesting dynamic, and clearly, you know, we shouldn't have been together for a long time. But it did take me having to get myself out of the depression first to find what was working and what wasn't. Um, rather than immediately just blaming it all on him.
And I think that's very commendable. I think a lot of people have a misunderstanding about depression because it's been not glamorized so much in media, but it's been portrayed a certain way, where it's debilitating and that you cannot function and what have you. But it you know it varies, and I think a lot of times people don't understand that it's not just because it's depression is when your brain chemicals aren't working. It's not just it's little signs.
Right.
So
Well,
it's
I th-
interesting.
I think there are different types of depression. So there is that chemical aspect to it, but for me, from my experience, I think it was a lot more situational. So I was depressed partly as a result of being in an abusive situation and having the trauma of feeling alone and not having social support because I was undiagnosed autistic and had no idea like the reason that I was having social challenges and felt isolated as a result. So when you have that kind of social isolation, that's a big reason to it's an easy way to become depressed, right? When you have that kind
Right.
of situational circumstance. Um, so I felt like, you know, once I learned that I'm autistic, I felt like a lot of my depression and anxiety stemmed from being autistic and people not understanding what my needs were because of that. Um, but now it's easier to explain. Like I still have some depression, but it's more manageable as a result
Good.
of knowing kind of what I need. I'm not on any medication, but I have been offered it by my doctor. It's like, no, I'll be fine.
I think it's fantastic that you're not on medication because, from what I understand, a lot of medication towards mental health is very, very, very addicting, right? So I think it's fantastic that you're off.
I don't want to disparage medication because obviously there's a lot of people that do need it and rely on it.
Yeah, yeah,
But for me, it's not the path that I wanted to be in, because when I was on medication when I first moved here, it was very numbing. So like
yes,
I couldn't experiencing any of my emotions, even the moments where I should have been happy. I was just like numb to everything.
yeah,
And that didn't feel right. Like,
mhm.
so yes, it numbed my desire to off myself, but it also numbed
Everything
like
else.
everything
Yeah,
else, and I'm like,
yeah.
that's not good. So I knew that I needed to get to a place where I didn't need it anymore. I didn't want to rely on it. But
And
like
look
I
at you
said,
now.
yeah, look at me now,
Yeah.
still offered it and choosing not to take
Good for
it.
you. Good for you. I'm very proud of you. That's awesome. Good for you.
Again, I think this stems back to what I said earlier about like the anti-drug messaging that I got in the 90s. They're like, it's not good. I don't want to be on anything, even prescription
Mhm.
stuff. I don't want it.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, but I will take some pain relief now if I have when I'm getting
Yeah.
a migraine, because I've learned I don't need to actually live through that pain anymore.
Take the win whenever you can. So
Ba-
yeah,
Back to that masochism stuff. Like
yeah.
I'd live with it. I'll have a migraine for several days. No, can't do anything about this. No. Doing better with that now too.
Good.
Um
Good.
all right. I have not answered this question yet, but I'm going to bring up some of the comments here.
Hmm.
We do have a new viewer,
Ooh.
Tony
Mwah.
Vlogs Adventure, says girl kiss. That was for something I
Mm.
said earlier. And all right, back to my dad actually left some comments back to
Yeah.
the birthing in the car story. Um, he said that my mom started hating my dad for not driving fast enough.
Frank, you should have known. You should have been driving at the speed of light. Anything less than that is unacceptable.
Getting a ticket. She had never been that quick before. I didn't believe her. So I think that they didn't leave like home as at the time that she wanted to leave. So
Mhm.
yeah, that's where that came from. Regarding the car, I just took it to a self-clean car wash. Oh my god, he had
Good.
to do it himself.
Oof.
Ugh, I couldn't. I hate having to clean stuff. But I mean, I've cleaned vomit out of my car from my kids, so you know.
That's one thing, though.
All right. So my dad says, you're right. Your experiences and sufferings grow you. God has a way of turning them to the good. Yeah, I try to do that too.
That's good.
But I also think we don't deserve to necessarily have to be put through those sufferings in order to grow. But it
Mm.
is some of those painful experiences are one of the things that help us get to that point. Case in point, so um, we've talked about my ex Lee on the stream before. He was a Malaysian guy that I was involved with just before I moved here, and losing him was one of the catalysts for my severe depression that I experienced at the time, my like suicidal thinking. Um, and like I was depressed before that, but losing him made it like way worse. And then that was one of the things that eventually led to me shifting it. So I kind of credit that whole experience as one of the big reasons why I was able to pull myself out of it, because I didn't want, I used him as my inspiration in a way. It was like, I don't want him to have this kind of impact on me. And yeah, so again, like losing him again last year, I've been looking for those growth opportunities of what can I learn from this, and what can I take away from this. And I, even to this day, I still feel like I'm experiencing that and looking for those lessons. Like last week was the anniversary of when we parted ways again. And I don't remember I've talked about this on the stream, but when I had reconnected with him later last year, and he told me the reason behind him ghosting me a second time, he told me it was related to his interpretation of a Facebook post that I had made, which was the first thing that he read after he got back home after dropping me at the airport. And when he told me this, like, I went through my Facebook to find what post he was referring to, because I couldn't remember what my exact words were, and I kind of wanted to understand how he had gotten the interpretation of it that he had gotten. And so it was this one post. I'm like, I'm pretty sure it was this one. And then Facebook memories came up last week, and it turns out it was not the post that I thought it was. It was a completely different one that I did not reread when I was looking through it, because it didn't come up in my search. And so now I know what the actual post was that had impacted him so much. And I was like, feel like, God, now I'm like grieving again, and like have all these other mixed emotions. And I'm like feeling like, oh, man, now I feel this urge to apologize again. Now I know the more of the reality of the situation. And I haven't decided what I'm going to do with it yet, because he has been clear with his messaging that he doesn't want to hear from me. So there's a part of me that thinks there's no point in me even reaching out to apologize now that I have more perspective on it. But then there's the other side of me that's like, but I wouldn't really be my authentic self if I'm not kind of. So right now it's just been like processing and writing things out, and I don't know what I'm going to do with it. It's like, just what are the lessons that I'm learning here? What are the positive things that I got out of my experiences with him? What have I learned? And what was it about that relationship that meant so much to me? And what were the kinds of things that I got out of it, so I can find those things in other places, since he doesn't want to be part of it, So yeah, I really do try to find those lessons and respect people's boundaries now. But it's a balance of how much is it respecting other people's boundaries versus what is it that I need for myself, for my healing as well. Right.
If I can present an option, I went through something similar where you realize you're in the wrong, but then you, at the same time, you couldn't communicate that to person A because of X, Y, Z, right?
Mm-hmm.
And here's what I did, and mind you, this is just for yourself. I would write down a note saying, "This is what I did. I'm sorry." Um, Put like just take it outside, light it on fire, and just let it go. So
Mm-hmm.
it's out into the ether, and you've apologized, and that's it, and then you're done. Just do that. Surprisingly helpful.
And that's an option. I did read my current version of my thoughts to my therapist this past week, and she's like, "I hope you do eventually share that with him." I'm like, "We'll see."
True.
Yeah, it's hard because, like, I watch a lot of, when I go through these kinds of experiences of like relationships not going the way that I want them to, I really want to understand why. And a lot of my YouTube watching is me watching videos to understand relationship stuff. So like attachment issues and attachment theory and understanding like avoidant attachment versus anxious attachment versus so there's fearful avoidant, which is also known as disorganized attachment, and then there's the dismissive avoidant. And I feel like this particular ex is more of the dismissive avoidant type, because he just shuts down and ghosts when things get uncomfortable. My ex-husband was more the anxious kind of attachment style. So he would like cling and try to, come at me and try to control things when things were difficult for him. And so my attachment style, I've kind of realized, is more the disorganized, fearful avoidant type, because I can oscillate between those two different ones depending on who the other person is and how they are reacting to things. And so like I will kind of play the opposite. And yeah, so I do a lot of watching of these kinds of videos to try and understand what's going on and what can I do to do better. And then I'm just like and then I'm just like get all confused. I'm like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do now.
I get you.
Yeah. So it's tough. All right, some more comments here. My dad says, I have done lots of jobs. My best one was working in the mental health industry. A lot of my own mental health issues helped me help others.
That's awesome.
I feel like that's been the case for me as well. Sharing my experiences with other people has definitely helped other people as well. I mean, sharing my experiences as an autistic person has helped other people realize that they're also autistic, which I think is amazing. Yeah. It's like, yeah, great. I'm glad I helped you realize that, because it's such a eye-opening experience to kind of discover this thing about yourself. And this is actually one of the reasons that Lee and I connected as friends in the beginning, is because I was open with him about my mental health struggles, and I was someone that he could open up to as well. So I'm sure he still struggles with things and makes it challenging, but people are on their own journeys as well. You can't fix everyone. And
as much as we'd like to, we
as
can't.
much as we'd like to. And I really wanted to be that like healing person for him, because I felt like that's what he was to me. Like he was the person that I feel like helped me learn to love myself, because like I said, I was in a toxic relationship, toxic marriage, where I was getting this kind of messaging from my ex-husband that made me feel like I deserved this kind of treatment because I wasn't a good person or whatever. But then he came along and he's like finding all these things that he enjoyed about me, and like he's just like all of these things about my personality he just really enjoyed, and that helped me love those parts of myself as well, because there were things that my ex-husband didn't like, right? So it's like, it was like giving me permission to enjoy those parts of myself. And I was like, if you were able to give me that gift where I can love myself, I wanted to be able to do that for him too. But I guess I could not make that a mutual connection. So everyone has their own journeys with that sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, you can't please everyone, can you?
No, you can't. I don't know if I what is YouTube's terms on discussing offing oneself? All right, I'll bring it up. We'll see. My dad says, my not suiciding when I was tempted and learning from my own experiences with family and friends helped me talk several people through similar moments and stay in the world. Yeah,
that's beautiful.
I feel like that's true, actually. I feel like it's a lot. I know when I'm in that mental state, the people I want to talk to, the people I feel comfortable talking to, are the people who've been there themselves, because they get it. I don't feel comfortable telling somebody that I want to die if they have never had that experience themselves, because then you have to worry about how they're going to react. Then you have to worry about comforting them when you want them to be the one comforting you, like helping you, and then it's like that's not the right kind of.
It's very tricky because when you're in the fog of things, obviously you don't see clearly. When you reach out to help, I think we talked about this, where you're in need of support, you reach out to people, you don't necessarily realize the impact of you asking that person for help, and it can damage the relationship. So it's very, very tricky.
Yeah, you have to be careful about who you talk to about things.
Definitely.
All right, my dad's responding to my thoughts about medication. So pills and depression were similar for him.
He was a fake me.
He felt like a fake me.
Yeah.
Taught
Same.
myself of them. I had to feel the pain to grow and teach me. Yeah, exactly.
Actually, I've got a very good analogy for that. It's like when I was on medication, it actually felt that the best way to describe it is if you have a very heavy school bag and you take the strap and you put it over the top of your head where my my earphones are, and you let go. And that's what it feels like. I mean, for me anyway. So I mean, at the end of the day, though, you're keeping yourself in regulation, yes, which is what it's for, but you're not you anymore.
Yeah, that's what it feels like. I mean, I do think that it helps some people feel more like themselves, but you have to get the right cocktail of medication, and that can be very tricky to do because there's so many varieties, right? So it's a lot of work to get there.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. So my dad says, what I learned helped me with my work later.
Yeah. Same.
And then my dad says, my streaming is going to help other people over time to improve too. Be optimistic.
That's nice of him to say.
If we get the viewers and they hear me saying these things,
that's my hope. I would say that, say this, if you can affect one person, it doesn't, I mean, obviously the high numbers are great because it's money in your pocket, and that's always good. You can always reinvest it wherever. But if you can affect one person, job done.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely. I don't need high volumes of viewers. I think it'd be too hard to manage the chat if I had a huge number of viewers.
That's what staff comes in. Yeah.
But if we get to that point, we might have to shift to a non-live stream format if it gets to that many.
Who knows? Well, touch wood, hopefully. Yeah.
All right, my dad's responding to on apologizing and honoring others' boundaries. One can take it to reconciliation. God forgives and can release guilt. The hardest is forgiving self.
Forgiving yourself, yeah, that's very true.
I feel like I have mostly forgiven myself for that sort of thing, but my mindset for wanting to reach out is less for myself in terms of forgiveness for myself, and more for I think about what would I want to be on the receiving end of. I would love to have any number of people from my past who have wronged me to just come out and apologize to me out of the blue. That would be such a load off for me.
That would be delightful, wouldn't
it? And so I think that's where it comes from, is like I would like to be on the receiving end of this. But it's so hard to get the phrasing right. Like you don't want to, at least for me, like I'm like, I don't want to come off as like I'm blaming him for stuff, but I also don't want to take sole responsibility for it because I'm not the only person to blame here. I will accept responsibility for my part in what happened, and I want to apologize for that, because I want to take ownership for this and show that I'm, what I've learned from it, and what how I'm trying to do better, and that sort of thing. Because I feel like for me, that's the kind of thing that I would want to hear, is like, what have you learned from your actions, and what are the steps you're doing to do better as a result, because you know that you were in the wrong. And that's a very hard thing for people to do. Even when you can get to that place of acceptance, it's like, oh no, I know I was in the wrong here. And I'm trying to do this thing better now. But then getting from that to apologizing to the person that you wronged is so hard. It's so hard because you have to be prepared for the fact that they might not offer you forgiveness for it. And so I think you have to be kind of in the right mindset for it as well. So like right now, I'm just like, I'm not in a place where I feel like I need reconciliation. I don't feel like I need his forgiveness because I've forgiven myself for it. It's like I've accepted this thing that I did. But it doesn't mean I wouldn't be open to it, but I don't need it as I might have felt like I needed it in the past, right?
I get you.
Yeah. So my dad says there are many who started like me and grow with the live streamings. Yeah. Well, it would be interesting to see if any of my viewers of the shorts from the last couple of days decided to pop in and have a watch. But I don't think that there were very many that even clicked onto my channel after watching. There were like a couple of views that went from my shorts to the channel to a couple of other videos, but very, very few views that way. So it's all learning process. I'm like, I don't know how to build audience. I was not expecting that many views on anything like ever. So but I still didn't get it didn't get any new subscribers or anything like that. So I'm like, okay.
I think it'll take time. It'll take time, but I think you'll get there.
What happens? All right. I suppose I need to answer this question. What was the question again? For anyone who's just tuning in, the question was, what are some things you loved about yourself as a child that are still true of you today? I would say my creativity. I was a very creative child, wild imagination, thinking up ideas and, writing stories and writing plays, choreographing dances, like all that kind of thing. And yeah, I'm still that way today. I also really liked the level of interest I could have on things. I like that I still have the ability to dive in deeply to topics that I'm really interested in. I'm glad that's not something that I've lost. I had there were times where I lost those sorts of things because they're of other external pressures or whatever. So that's been one of those things that I've been doing more of to find myself again. It's like reconnecting with those interests and
that's really good.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Since we have a couple of viewers right now, including my dad, if you have any questions for us, feel free to drop us a question in the chat, and we will answer them for you. Make us answer some deep, vulnerable questions from about experiences that we've had in our life. Anything challenging, we'll open up about it. To the extent that we're able to, but that's the purpose. That's the purpose of this stream. If you're watching, not on the live stream, and you're just watching, after it's been published, feel free to drop us a question in the comments, and I will bring it up in the next stream.
Good idea. Okay.
We would love to have that as well. All right, I'm going to draw another question from my Skip the Small Talk deck. What's at least one thing? What's at least one thing you want more of in your life?
Ooh, this is a tricky question. Is this like something physical, something tangible, an emotion?
It can be any way that you want to interpret it. I like the intangible kind of interpretation, but well, why don't we have a tangible and intangible kind of answer? Go both.
I mean, I think saying money is a bit of a cop out. I think we could all do with a bit more for whatever reason.
Oh yeah, that's the obvious.
So that's the obvious one. That's the obvious
Even
one.
Elon Musk wants more money.
Exactly. Yeah, there's no such thing as enough. So I don't know. I think tangible wise, I love to get a bit more work. So for the audience, I run my own company, and it's good fun. But obviously, there are days where I'll just be sat at my table going, blah, 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 blah. And then other days where I'm just head to toe covered with work, has its pros and cons. So obviously, having more of that consistently would be good. Um, Other than that, if in a non-tangible way, something that I could do more with is, oh, I don't know. I think it's trying to be more of a team player, because it's after I fell ill, I became very obviously the doctors did say you have to focus on you, so that's you have to focus on your recovery so you can get better. And it got to a point where um, I kind of went the other way. Like I said, like when it comes up to helping people, it became a point where, and to be fair, I still struggle with this, where I'm always like, oh fuck me, it's always me. I always have to help out this person. I can't say no. But at the same time, you think about all those times where someone has helped you, and it's just like throwing something back, and it's not the end of the world, is it? So I mean, it might take you a bit more time. You might be a little bit more tired, but it's just time. That's all it is.
Yeah, that's making me think about my own limitations with helping people. I find it a lot easier to say no to things that I don't want to do. So I probably don't get
You're a
asked.
stronger person than me. Yeah.
I don't get asked to help people as often as what other people might get asked to do things. So I'm just like, nope, sorry.
So
But
long, farewell. Auf Wiedersehen.
but that's because when I do help people, it comes from a genuine place. I want it to come from of like a place of, I notice that you're struggling with something, so I want to help out, and I'm just going to help out, rather than being asked. I think this might stem from, we talked about pathological demand avoidance on an earlier stream, and I think it might partially stem from that. It's like if I'm feeling obligated to do a thing to help out in a particular way because somebody has specifically asked me to do it, then I'm less likely to do it. I mean, that's one of the reasons that I
Sure.
probably did not like feeling like my ex-husband wanted me to be a stereotypical 1950s housewife. That's how I described it. It's like he wanted me to be, more tidy and clean around the house than what was
Walking around the
easy for
house
me
with
to
an
do.
apron and just going, hi,
Yeah,
darling.
all of that, right? And I think because there was this certain level of expectation for it, it didn't feel like I was freely giving it because there was that expectation. So I'm more likely to help when it's not expected of me and I just want to freely give it.
Yeah.
But at least that means on the other end, whoever's on the receiving end of it, hopefully they recognize that it's coming from a genuine place and not because I feel
Yeah.
obligated to do something.
I mean, it's a very tricky balance because obviously they always say you should be selfless and don't have any expectations. Like when it comes to some people, I'll help out and I generally don't expect anything in return.
Oh,
But
me
then
either.
but there are times where you're just like, come on, bro. I've scratched your back. Give me, scratch mine. It can even be just goodwill, And at the end of the day, though, as I mentioned before, you can't control other people. Like you could literally go above and beyond and help someone, and they'll just go over their head and they'll just take and take and take. And it's all about, as you said, setting boundaries. But that's obviously easier said than done.
Yeah. I think it can cause some conflicts, right? So like it's making me think of a specific example where my ex-husband and I kind of butted heads on this because he felt more transactional about things, whereas I wanted to just accept somebody's offer to help as like genuine and not expected for me to give something in return, because that's how I am, right? Like if I decide to treat someone to dinner, I don't expect that they're going to treat me to the next one.
Yeah.
That's just not how I operate. So if someone decides to treat me to a dinner, then I don't feel like I should be obligated to do the same in return when that happens. And maybe some people feel slighted by that, but I just this past weekend, I got brunch with a friend who was visiting from Alaska, and
Oh wow. Okay.
and he's been down like a few times last year, and he's always treats me whenever we go out, pretty much always, if not always. And uh, if that was a problem for him, I think he would have said something, because like I can be direct with like, this is, and I was always like, do you want me to contribute? And he'll be like, no, it's fine. Your company is enough for me. And so, I think there's a part where he recognizes it's a struggle for me right now because I'm unemployed. I would love to be able to take him out for dinner and be the one paying for something at some point in the future when it is easier for me to do so. But like right now it's not, and I feel like those kinds of relationships are more genuine rather than where you feel obligated to reciprocate with paying for things.
Well, I mean,
But yeah.
it's all about balances. I mean, like for example, like if you have a friend that wants to take you to a fancy museum, right? From just off the top of my head, and the ticket price is quite high. You're like, oh, I don't have enough money, and you're like, whatever, I'm spending for you. And then afterwards, you guys go out and you guys get like a juicy burger at at a street vendor, and you contribute with that. I mean, that's the thing. You contribute with what you have.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I mean, like obviously, if you had more, I'm sure you would more. But the fact is,
Yeah.
it's the emotion behind it, the meaning behind it. So
Right.
as long as the other person is aware, listen, I can only contribute X amount. Let me contribute X amount. Then if they're fine with it, why not?
Yeah, as long as you're upfront and honest
Yeah,
about the circumstances, then I think it's fine. And I will reciprocate when it's possible. So like
yeah.
when I went back to Malaysia for my third time since moving here, so my May trip last year, so many of my Malaysian friends, they always treat me when I go and visit, and they buy my meals and stuff for me. But I'd just had a promotion at work, and I was feeling like I now I have this additional income. I want to treat my friends because I feel like I can. No obligation for anything return. I just want to treat them because of how amazing they are, and I want to spend time with them.
Yeah.
So when I feel like I can, and if it's something that I want to, then I will do it. But it's something that I struggled with for a long time because early on in my marriage, um, my ex-husband and I were invited to a birthday party at this kind of flashy restaurant, and
Ooh.
we were expected to pay for our own meals and stuff there. And
Mhm.
at the time I was like, I don't think we can go because we can't afford the meal. And the person whose birthday it was offered to buy our meal for us, and I took
That's
that at
nice.
face I took that at face value. And my ex-husband was like, no, don't, you shouldn't accept that. Like, that's rude to accept. I was like, but how, like, surely they're not going to offer to do something if they're not actually open to doing it. Like,
Right.
for and again, I didn't know I was autistic at the time, so I don't understand so-called like social norms and like these sorts of things. So
Mhm.
I'm like, is this a thing that I'm just not aware of, that like,
Mhm.
and so there were a lot of things like that 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 he tried to teach me in a way. So I'm just like getting out of my marriage, like unlearning those sorts of things and trying to be more upfront and honest. Is like, please let me know if it's not something that you actually want to do. I need I need to know what those boundaries are, and I need you to be honest with me rather than, resenting me for something that you've offered that I take at face value.
Yeah.
Right? Don't have resentment for me because I take you up on something. I do not always say yes, please offer me that. There are times where I will decline because I'm not sure if it's a genuine offer, or if I'm not sure if I should be repaying it in a way. So Mike talked about the Oracle show that was coming to San Francisco this past weekend. So I went out to that, and then we went out to the bar afterwards. Somebody offered to buy me a drink, and I said no because, well, first of all, it was from someone who doesn't know me very well. I mean, we'd met before, but it had been years since we'd seen each other, and it kind of felt like one of those situations where it was being offered because they were offering it to somebody else that they did know in front of me. And I didn't want to be like, oh, yes. It just didn't feel like the right moment. It's like, no, I don't need a drink right now. So it kind of, I think, depends on my relationship with the person as well, whether I feel like I can accept or whether it feels like it's coming from a genuine place. How well do I know this person that I can interpret correctly what their meaning is behind this?
Yeah, I get you. I mean, I imagine it's equally as tricky because as a woman as well, there's different kind of not expectation, but this kind of fear, I suppose, that this guy's being really nice to
Oh,
me.
okay. That was a woman who asked if I wanted to a drink. So in that
Okay.
particular situation. But yes, there are times where although, I talked about this last week, where I don't have like a huge massive long line of guys that are trying to hit on me. So anytime a guy offers
That
me,
you're aware of.
that I'm aware of, I don't think that they exist anyway. But so anytime a guy does offer to buy me a drink or buy me a dinner, if we're just friends, I think it's just a friendly gesture. I don't think it means anything. Because that's been what my history is. And a lot of like most of the time the people that my male friends that do that are married. So it's not like I'm going to think that it means that they want to sleep with me. Right? It's like it's my married male friends.
Mm,
No.
yeah. Okay. No.
Don't think so.
Okay.
Um no, sometimes they are better off than I am, and they like my company, so they're happy to treat me to something. So yeah, as this was the case of the friend from Alaska that I mentioned. He's married, so like I don't think there's anything like that. It's just a friendly sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
um
awesome.
yeah, but damn, Sharon, I'm still like, how do I have all these amazing guy friends, and I know how amazing guys can be,
hmm
but
But you still know how to pick them, don't you? Yeah.
I still but they still don't want to have a relationship with me. They just want friendship.
Well, I mean, like, put it this way, like, I think friendship for men, it's a very underrated thing with us because obviously when growing up, as we were mentioning earlier about masculinity, you're taught to be a leader, to be an alpha, to be the head of your family, and to have a close group of friends. It's something like kind of childish that as a kid, teenager, young adult, that's fine. But after that, you have to quote unquote grow up and
Mhm.
be a man. So, and this isn't just a Malaysian thing or an English thing or an American thing. It's just generally a societal thing where men and this is like, I mean, this is why a lot of guys I know, we always say, "Oh, I wish we could hang out. I wish we were tight like before," but things just get in the way. And you know, uh, for women, obviously, I'm not going to speak for all women, but my mum had this amazing group of friends where that they were friends since they were kids, and every Friday and or Saturday, they would make a plan where no matter what's going on, we meet up. Those that can, great. Those that can't, it's fine. But we'll have a meetup of something, even if it's just two people. And they did this for decades, and they still do this to this day. So it's all about balance, and it's tricky because uh, men are just kind of toy. I mean, it's a lot better now. Don't get me wrong, but it's a lot about um, men have to go out and succeed and rise as high up as they can, and then after that, that's when you can kind of relax and be more social. But it's one of those things, really.
And then when you do have the friendships, it's more superficial. You don't feel as as it's not so easy to open up about your feelings and experiences. At least that's what society leads me to believe.
Yeah, yeah, I agree.
So yeah, but I find it fascinating that I'm the kind of woman that has drawn a lot of men towards me for friendship, because a lot of the societal kind of views and perspectives is a lot of people have this perspective that men and women can't be friends. They can only be in relationship with each other. And then there's this perception that if a guy is friends with a woman, he just wants to sleep with her. And I'm like, that's not my experience. Yeah. So, I don't know what it is about me that makes it easier. I think one of the things is I have a lot more compassion for the male experience than what seems to be common for women. Like I try to understand what is going on and what's behind reasons, and maybe it's a selfish reason for me. It's like, why are guys like this, so that to help me understand for how to approach things in relationship, right? But I think there's a lot of things that men and women just don't understand about each other because they're not willing to ask the right questions. And I definitely try to be more understanding of what the male experience is. And I think in some cases, I think some people might consider me too compassionate or too understanding in some situations. If I can take on blame for things and understanding for things that they would cut somebody off for, and I wouldn't. I don't know. It's an interesting thing for me that I'm still kind of sorting through. I'm like, but I understand why people are the way that they are, or I want to. And so I feel like everyone is deserving of compassion. You don't know what their whole story is. You don't know what led them to be the way that they are. You don't know what caused them to behave the way that they are. If you don't ask those questions, then you're just going to judge them based on what you see, but you don't know what the depth behind that. And I want to know the depth behind people's behaviors and decisions.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's tricky because if you have a relationship or a friendship, what I mean, with a person of the opposite gender, and you make it very, very abundantly clear, like, listen, we're homies, we're fine. It can be tricky because I just remember, like, there's a friend of mine in the US, and she and I get along very, very well, and she's a very, very beautiful, very outgoing, very intelligent person, and like everywhere we go, guys will come up to her, and uh, how do I put this lightly? Uh, we when she's a beach kind of girl, she loves going to the beach, and she has, put it this way, she's got the very contemporary swimwear catalog, that kind of thing, and so and it gets a lot of attention. And I mean, I'm a guy. If you prick me, do I not bleed? And I remember, like, she we'd always go out together, and she's like, "Why do you never try to sleep with me?" I'm like, "What do you mean?" It's like, "You never try anything." I'm like, "We're homies, dude. I'm not gonna try, that kind of thing." And like she just found that really refreshing because I was the one few guys that it was just off the table for me. I'm like, yeah, and like, and she would do this joke where she would try to quote unquote like like get it on. I'm just be like, what are you doing, bro? And she just start laughing. So it's one of those things where you can kind of subvert the expectations by just being upfront with it.
Can
So yeah.
I offer something? And I could be reading this completely wrong, but it is possible that she was doing that because she was attracted to you.
I mean,
I say this because that was my behavior with Lee before I was interested in him, but it led to me realizing that I was actually interested in him.
well, I don't think that was the case. I mean, to be fair, she just recently got engaged, so I
Okay.
don't think it's not something that she's missed out on. But yeah, we were just really open to it and like with each other, and because I told her like we're hanging out, we're having a few drinks, we're going to like romantic bar, not bars, on the beach there at night and just talking. And I remember looking over at her and I'm like, mate, don't worry, I'm not gonna try anything. And she's like, thank you, I know you're not. And then she'd be like, this is so refreshing. And I'm like, blah blah blah. I'm like, yeah. And it became like this running joke. She was like, you're my non-gay gay friend. If that makes sense. I'm like,
Yeah, no, I get it.
I'm like, yeah, and like I remember like a few of the guys. This is actually really funny. Like whenever we would go shopping, she would always grab me and pull me into the dressing room with her, and just like she's like, "Oh, can I have a look?" And this isn't just her psychological thing because we're quite upfront with each other. And a lot of my guy friends would just be like, "Wait, how many you've seen her wearing what or not wearing anything?" I'm like, "Yeah, loads." And like she'd be like, yeah, for his birthday, I sent him like a saucy happy birthday picture. I'm like, yeah, it was fantastic, but you know what I mean, like you can appreciate it, but there was no like kind of thing, and it just became this running joke. Like every time now for her birthday, I'll send her a picture of me just squeezing my boobs together, just going, "Happy birthday, sweetie," thinking of you, and like it's just a bit of a laugh, and yeah, it's just one of those things. So as long as you cut off that, like, listen, we're homies, and yeah, I love you and whatever, but don't worry, I won't try anything because we're strictly friends, and it's okay.
Oh, I think when you do have those clear boundaries, it really it does help with that freedom.
Mm,
There's still a risk that one of you might develop feelings when you're having that kind of playful. At least that's my kind of history when I have that kind of playful.
yeah,
I have no expectations, like I'm not planning to, and then one joke too far, it's like, oh fuck, I'm
yeah,
attracted to this person now, because
no,
that's how the attraction develops for me.
yeah,
It's like I'm not intending to fall for this person, but oh fuck,
mm,
now I want to get with this friend. and
yeah,
and whether or not act on it is very dependent on whether or not I think that they would be open to it, or whether I think it's worth the risk.
mm,
Yeah, like, or what level of risk is it here? For example, if I'm about to leave Malaysia soon anyway, then if I fuck up the friendship, who cares? I'm leaving.
yeah. I mean, it's very tricky because I think we're at that stage now, both as a society and us as people. I think a lot of the a lot of the lines get blurred. Where, and to be fair, I've done this plenty of times where I'll have homies and we might occasionally, but we're still homies. As soon as the next morning we're like fist bumping, high fiving, they were like, without getting too graphic, there was someone when I was in the US who literally, while we're lying in bed, and she'd be, oh, I'm going on a date with this guy tomorrow. I really like him. And I was like, okay, well, that sounds good. I hope it goes well. I wish you the best. And obviously, with when things got serious between the two of them, we were like, okay, we're good, but but we were still friends. Well, I'm always like, send us a picture of you guys and what have you, and it was nice. So
Did
it's
she
all
ever?
about
Did she ever tell him about that?
no,
About yeah.
no, and but I mean to be fair, I never met the guy. I think it would have been awkward if I did because yeah, I mean that would have been weird, right? So no, I never met the guy.
Yeah, I ask, I think, in part because, I've chosen to remain friends with some of my exes just because, they started out as friends and, they're important people in my life. But I think there's a part of me that has this fear that if I was to get involved with a guy in the future, are they going to make me have to give up these other friendships because they feel like jealous of my friendship with these other guys that I've slept with before, right? Is that going to be a
That's on them.
problem?
That's on them,
And
though, isn't it?
yeah,
So
and that's true. Like I feel like if they do have a problem with it, they're probably not the right person for me. I do need to
yeah,
be with someone, but I also feel like um it limits my options. I feel like there's so many things that limit my options of who I can have as a partner because I just have what it feels like a very different personality from what a lot of other women have, from what I see in media and from from what I've heard from experiences of female friends. Um, it just it seems to be more normal that it's expected for you to not stay friends with your exes, and so it's not a big deal. But other people, it's like, that's not cool. That's a betrayal, you
yeah.
know. They see it like that because they assume that if you stay friends with them, it means that you would hook up
Have
with them
lingering feelings. Yeah,
yeah, you still have feelings for them. You would hook up with them when they don't take into consideration that circumstances have changed, or there's a reason that you're not together anymore. If you were, if you wanted to be with them, wouldn't you still be with them, right?
well, I think
Uh,
it's also a question of maturity because obviously as a teenager and as a 20-year-old, even to an extent a 30-year-old, emotions can get in the way, and can you ever really be friends? And sometimes you can't, but sometimes you can. And I'm very very friendly with some people, and it's not weird. I mean, it can be weird in the initial phase, but obviously after
hmm,
that, you're like, there's a reason why. I thought you were amazing. I still think you're amazing. And even though, let's say, we're not having that relationship anymore, having you in my life makes it better. And
yeah.
obviously, I want to see you happy and etc., successful and thriving. And you realize that, well, for me anyway, the older I got, there's just less time for bullshit. Where we're no longer it's going to be awkward, so I don't want to talk to you anymore. I'm like, well, that's just kind of that's childish because
Oh yeah.
you like that person for a reason, and just because it didn't work out, you can't just. I mean, they're still amazing. They're still the person that you're attracted to.
That's why Lee ghosting me was so painful for me, and why I couldn't understand why he would do that, because surely if he really cared about me, that he wouldn't like want to cut me off like that. Because like I said, for in the past, like for me, there was a part of me that understood that he was not at the place where he could give me what I wanted in a relationship, but I still wanted to have him in my life. I didn't want to cut him off because he was still a very good friend. I still valued him as a person, even if he couldn't give me, because there were certain things that triggered me to feeling anxious, and I'm like, I didn't want to feel like that, but I still want him in my life. And I feel like the right balance would be, maybe I just need to be friends with him, because if I'm just friends with someone, it's not going to trigger my anxiety the same way, because I know where their line is, right?
Yeah,
And I'm not looking for something serious commitment, which he's clearly not capable of doing, but I still want him in my life. But for him, it was like,
it's too
yeah,
much.
yeah, it's too much. So I like without I like without mind reading, but there's a part of me that tried to interpret some of the things that he said to me and made me wonder if he had stronger feelings for me. And so it was too painful for him to see me as just a friend anymore after the experiences that we had, and that was why he had to cut me off. But it's still very because my mindset is very different from that. Like I want to have a person in my life regardless of what the nature of that connection is. If I think they're an amazing person, I don't. My reasons for cutting someone off is because if they've been a terrible person to me. Like I have severed ties with my ex-husband as much as feasibly possible because I just can't stand having him in my life at all. And I cannot wait until my son is also 18. So I really have no reason to deal with him anymore at that point.
That's so harsh.
But it's true, right? Okay,
Yeah.
so I mentioned that my daughter turned 18 last week, and the day after her birthday, my ex-husband messaged me and something about our daughter, and I was like, well, just so you know, now that our daughter is now legally an adult, I am no longer obligated to communicate with you about her, so I will not be. So, like, I've already severed ties with him with regards to her. I only have to co-parent with him about our son now because our son is still a minor. So that's how much and that is the extent of. That is the only reason I will cut someone off is if they have really harmed me that much. And I mean, maybe that's the reality. Maybe I did cause that same kind of harm to Lee, and that's why he had to cut me off. But it's harder for me to, I don't know. It's still very hard for me to comprehend because of how much value I saw in him and how much I thought that he valued me. I don't understand why that would cause someone to sever ties. But people react differently to different situations, and sometimes you just have to accept them, even if you don't understand them.
Yeah, and I mean, it's very unfortunate that it's very often that we often don't get that closure. Like it's obviously if let's say two people have a fight and they go, okay, we're done. You have to close. Okay, we had this blow up. Screw that person, whatever. But when you don't know, it gnaws at you, and it will continue to gnaw at you.
Because your brain wants to understand. If you have just a straight cutoffs, then it's like, well, what was the reason for that? At least give me some kind of explanation, even if it's not the whole truth. Like it's still better than some kind of goodbye. Even if it's just a goodbye, I'm not going to talk to you again, is still better than never replying to a message, but still visibly reading those messages, or then stopping that too. Like, but why? But why? What happened?
I mean, that's why ghosting is it's so painful because you're left asking why. Was it me? Was it them? Are they okay? Whatever. So
yeah,
you don't know.
So many mixed thoughts. It's like, what did I do wrong? What did I do to hurt them? And you have to kind of come to a place of acceptance, even if you never understand. So, I mean, I still, like I said, I went back to Malaysia to get more closure than being ghosted. So I have some understanding, but I still didn't get the full story, but at least it was better than
nothing, right?
Straight nothing. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to,
look at the chat.
I know. My dad's just posted a thing in response to this. So I'll bring that up first and then we'll go back to his other messages as well. So, my dad says, sex bonds people. Lots of evidence for that. People aren't good at dealing with emotions. It is why there is a lack of trust.
He's very correct.
Yeah. I get very attached in sex. I'm sure there's plenty of people that can have detached sexual encounters and it not be a big deal. But for me, no, it like I get very attached to the person, and so it becomes very hard to let go. When other people did not want the same thing as me. And yeah, people deal with their emotions in different ways. And yeah, I think I feel like from what I gather of what I've read on social media, on threads and Instagram and the stuff that I follow on there, is there's a significant uptick of situationships these days because people are so afraid of asking for what they actually want.
Commitment
And
and
yeah,
fear of rejection.
a fear of rejection. They would rather feel the presence of someone, even if it's not exactly what they want, than not have them at all.
Guilty, very
Or
guilty. Yes, very guilty.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a struggle for me. I mean, my relationship with Lee was essentially a situationship because I didn't have the courage to tell him that outright specifically that I wanted a future with him and I didn't want to stay stuck with going with the flow was the statement. There's one of the last things that he said to me at the airport was like, what's wrong with just going with the flow? And I don't think that I was very familiar with that term beforehand, but I have since seen a lot of women in particular talking about this phrase on social media and how if a guy says that to you, it means that you should just let them go if you want a committed relationship because that they're not going to give you commitment if they say that. And I'm curious, Sharad, what is, because I've only really seen women talking about this going with the flow statement, what is your male perspective on this phrase? Do you interpret it that same kind of way, or do you see it as, it is a stepping stone of if the relationship progresses, you would be willing to commit down the line, or is it more just like, yeah, I don't actually see a future with you, but I'm having fun while you're around?
Well, I mean, it really depends. I mean, as long as said communication is key, if both parties are aware of, okay, we know what this is, great, you know. And there have been times where, and to be fair, like I've said this as well. I remember like there was this barmaid who like, oh, when I was in Hull, I was a bartender. And so someone I worked with, she and I got pretty close. And uh, actually, funnily enough, we were in a different bar. And one of our regulars came up to us and they noticed that we were like being very chummy. And I don't know why I'm remembering this now. And they were like, oh, you two are a thing. I didn't realize. And I remember we turned and we looked at each other. And without saying a word, we just smiled. We just went, we're just seeing how it goes.
Mm.
You know, we've got no expectations. And if it turns out great, if it's just what it is, it's great. So in some ways, you're kind of protecting yourself because
Mm.
I imagine as well in previous generations, maybe not necessarily our parents or our parents' parents, not necessarily, but obviously we have had experience societally wise where people are locked into relationships, marriages. Like there's a lot of people I know. A lot is a bit of a stretch. Like maybe about a handful of people I know, where they said that not that their parents' relationship was loveless. There was love, but there was no affection. It
Mm.
was very much a procreation kind of situation where, okay, we're now a family, so let's write this down on a piece of paper, and it's very tricky. So I think there has to be a balance now where if people come from that background, they want to do a complete tonal shift, obviously, and that can relate to anything. So I imagine now as well, people, not just men, but people are like have come from those backgrounds and they want to not be completely different, but gauge into it differently. So it's a lot of give and take.
I like what you said about it being kind of a protective measure. So it's a way to hold yourself back from feeling your feelings, I think. You don't want to jump into it, because what if you start feeling something that the other person is not feeling? Do you feel like it could come from that?
Very much so. Yeah. I mean, like, it's like, what if I like this person too much and this person doesn't like me back? What if this person's going to break my heart? What's the point? And like, like it's the most obvious thing. And in my experience was, I remember I was with someone and I was just, it annoys me to this day, this feeling. I remember like walking down the street, like those cheesy bits in movies when you're like, birds are chirping, the sun's out, and you're like finger gunning everyone. Like, walking down the street, and I just remember I was in Hull at the time, and I remember I was just reading the newspaper and having a bite, and I was just thinking, what if this never happens again? And what if I've already at the top and all the way is down? And I remember thinking, and I was so ashamed, like, maybe I should just cut it off now because this is as ever good it's going to be. I didn't, but I remember thinking at the time, I was like, this is as good as it's going to get. You know what I mean? So in some ways that you want to preemptively shut things down so you yourself don't get hurt and you don't experience that drop. So maybe.
Yeah, I definitely felt like I had that with Lee. I think that's why I felt like I made this comment about, or feeling like I had to, there was a part of me that had to end things in that particular moment if he wasn't going to be willing to step up for the relationship, because I didn't want to fall deeper in love with him than I already was, because I was already madly in love with him. I didn't want to fall deeper in love with him and to have my heart broken even more later on. Like, that was a huge thing for me, because I'd already had my heart broken by him before. I didn't want to go through that again. Still went through it again, but at least, like, hopefully it was less painful for me last year than it would have been if I'd continued with it and he still had that out, made that decision, or like shut down and abandoned me. I don't know. So yeah, I think that's something that, men and women struggle with, of fearing that you care more for the other person than they care for you, and not wanting to get hurt. So you shut down and get protective about yourself because you don't want to get hurt. So hard. But like, I gave this piece of advice to a friend recently, because he had that kind of mindset. He's like, I don't want to hurt another person. I don't want to get hurt myself. And I said to him, because it's a realization that I had as a result of losing Lee, is that you can't have the kind of loving relationship you want without the risk of getting hurt. You have to put yourself in the position of being open enough to love the person and risk losing them in order to have the relationship that you want to have with them.
Yeah, I think it can just be broken down to nothing ventured, nothing gained. If you don't put yourself out there, no one's going to put themselves out there for you. So it's a lot of give and take. It's a lot about give and take. And if it gets to a situation where you don't put yourself out there and someone wants to reach out to you, it's going to be a very uneven relationship where where down the line, God forbid, you might resent the person, or that person might resent you. So so that could lead to a lot of different worms being opened up.
Right, exactly. I definitely need to have the balance in the relationship. I don't want to be the only person giving to it. And that was another fear that I had as well. My dad has a comment about the going with the flow thing, so let me pull that up. Going with the flow is partly about a person's PTSD and becoming an avoidant relationship personality.
Yes,
so Sharad's right.
Yep.
He did did correct your spelling in the next
No,
comment.
no, you're fine. So yeah,
You bring that up.
cheers, Frank. You're all good.
Yeah. So yeah, I do think that there's part of that. I know he has a lot of relational trauma, but I still wish that he would have been willing to open up with me.
Well, I mean, at least he's doing that now.
Not my dad. I mean Lee.
Oh, yes, that too.
Yeah. Well, I hope it eventually becomes a catalyst of change for him and helps him realize that he needs to grow. I don't know if that's going to happen, but I do hope that eventually he grows from it, whether it's from losing me or from a future kind of situation. But he's clearly had like a pattern of shutting down when things get hard, and when you can recognize there's a pattern in yourself, then you should realize that the problem is you and you have the capability of making changes. Or you should have the capability, but you have to be able to reach that place for yourself and realize it's enough of a problem for you to make that decision for yourself. Nobody else is going to help you do that. And yeah, that was something that I realized. Like, I wanted to help him. I was not going to be capable of helping him if he wasn't willing to help himself. So
yeah, there's only so much you can do.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to go back to some comments from a while ago from my dad. I think I already read that one.
What about the one with the look at the statistics? Is that something we talked about?
No, but I think I'm further back than that at the moment.
Right.
I don't know what this was in response to. Most don't know how they say that on their own podcasts.
I think he's referring to the people unaliving themselves and how to say that so you don't get demonetized or censored.
Oh.
Yeah. Because that can be a real thing. I didn't realize how big it was until I think I was watching some YouTube lives and people were saying that term. I'm like, why are they saying unaliving themselves?
Oh, because the other words will get you
demonetized or censored or taken down or whatever. So
yeah. That makes sense why that term came about. It was so, and
that's so weird. Yeah.
You said rightly, you can't help everyone. Even Jesus didn't heal everyone he came across. Often after healing, he said, your faith has healed you, or someone's faith was involved. Yeah.
Very true. Very true.
Okay. I think that has something to do with God honoring free will. Yeah. Yeah. You have to be willing to make the change in yourself to accept it.
Yeah.
People offering things is an autistic thing. With offering to do things without any expectation is an autistic thing. Interpreting the situation is complicated. It started for me with a cousin who always offered to buy things, but I felt I couldn't repay.
That's interesting.
Yeah. And look at the statistics. So this is the comment that you were talking about, right? Women marrying a good friend for at least 4 years have longer lasting marriages. Perhaps men that are friend zoned should be relooked at in this modern world. No chemistry. I have thoughts about this term friend zoning, because in my experience, there's no such thing. No. I feel like a lot of guys seem to complain about being friend zoned, in spaces on the internet or whatever. But because I'm someone who has a history of being attracted to guys who were friends first, I had no attraction on the outset. But then as we became friends, then I developed attraction for them. This idea of friend zoning someone is a foreign concept to me, because it's like, but then even if a guy is just a friend, what is wrong with that? That's still is showing that I see that you have value, even if I don't want to, you know, give you my body, right? Just the thought of, you know, who you are as a person. I still want you in my life. But yeah, but the just the possibility that it could grow to more, regardless of whether it happens or not. It's yeah, it's one of those things that because my experience is so different than that, that whole friend zone idea. I would never quote unquote friend zone a guy that limit them to only or relegate them to only possibly being friends with me. If because I know I that I have no idea what the future holds and how things might develop in the future. Uh, Having said that, I've probably been, you know, I've talked about my history of being only friends with guys, and my male friends don't actually want to get with me. So I've probably been on the receiving end of being quote unquote friend zoned more often than I felt like I've
Equality, yes.
more than I felt like I've given it, right? Like,
Right.
so what are your thoughts on friend zoning?
I mean, friend zoning is tricky because obviously, as you said, whenever you think of friend zone, it's about physical and romantic um, subversion. And to be fair, like yeah, I mean, like as a guy, I mean, I friend zoned girls, and like we were talking about that story. Yeah, like that friend of mine. If I remember, we were talking, and like she was saying, yeah. So if I came onto you, what would you do? And I remember I was drinking, and I just burst out laughing in her face. I was like, and I remember like, and some of our friends would be like, oh my god, she's amazing, she's got a great body, and I'm just like, she's so goofy, bro. They're like, oh, what happens if she like, you know, like tried to smooch you? I'm like, I'd probably burst out laughing. It's just one of those things, you know, and like, yeah, and it was just, I mean, I firmly believe that, despite contrary belief, I believe that men and women can be friends. I do believe that. Despite their levels of attractiveness, I believe that people can be friends. And let me stress this: like there have been instances where let's say lightning strikes, and you know all the stars are in alignment, and something happens once. I believe you can be friends after that. I believe you can. Uh, yeah. So I think friend zoning now is it's a much more different thing than it was 10 years ago, 20 years ago. It's a completely different thing.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and because of social media as well, people are more interconnected now than ever. I don't think it's a big deal. Like yeah, I mean nowadays if someone goes, oh, I'm being friend zoned, it could be a romantic thing. And the good thing is, if that happens, in my experience, with myself and other guys I know, if your friend zone, they're like, all right, cool, have a good one, take care. They'll be like, oh, don't you want to be my friend? I'm like, I've got plenty of friends, mate. I don't need anymore. So it depends. So as long as you're both parties are open with what happens, and to be fair, if feelings do eventually come up, which is normal, that has to be discussed as well. So it's one of those things where as we mature as a society, it's just things change.
Yeah, I guess one aspect that I'm thinking of, like knowing the fact that I am liable to fall for friends, I wouldn't want to also put that out there of like becoming friends with a guy and making them aware of, you know, you have a better chance of getting with me once we have a friendship established, because I don't want to get his hopes up for it either, like for the
Yeah.
possibility. Like I don't want to make that as an outset kind of thing. It's like,
Mm.
just get to know me, like just let me get to know you, and maybe
If you're gonna
something
be
will
my
happen.
lover, you
It's
gotta
like
be my friend. Yeah.
because I'm a yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe that's where it all started. I talked about previously. I used to do catwalk modeling as like I did a training, and one of my graduations I had to do a dance to that song.
Of course you did.
I did, because that was back in the 90s. Yeah. Oh, I think that was something else that you brought. Oh yeah, so you were talking about your friend being too goofy, and that makes me wonder. Does that mean that you could not like date a
No, no,
female
no, no,
comedian?
no, 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 no,
Like,
no, 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 no. Like, don't get me wrong. I mean, like, no, but by goofy, I don't mean like. And to be fair, I have nothing against funny women comedians, female comedians. I've got nothing against that. But I mean goofy as in she was just such a dope, and like she was so intelligent and eloquent and an incredible personality. But she was, I don't know, that energy where like it was just like we were just too busy having fun, and there was no tension, put it that way. She was just so goofy in the sense that you could
so
like
you
there
didn't
was
feel any
no
like sexual chemistry as a
no
result of that?
and like I said, the person I'm thinking of, a very beautiful person. I've seen her in various stages of undress and very close proximity, and I just like I can appreciate it, but I just know like she's my friend, and barring like like she trips and I fall over, barring that, like barring that, I just couldn't see anything. And I remember telling her, like, I remember we were having drinks by the beach one time, and I remember she was looking over to me and she was like, "What happens if we actually did it?" And I'd just be like, "Could you imagine the awkwardness the next morning?" And I remember both of us just be like looking at each other, just going, "Ah!" and just burst out laughing. And that was all we talked about, and it was just really funny.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess the reason I asked that is because I feel like my personality is not the standard female personality that guys seem to go for, and I am kind of a goofy person myself. So there have been times where I've wondered, like, does that stand in my way? Like, am I too much the friend character that guys just don't see me in a they don't fantasize about me in a sexual kind of way or romantic way because I'm just the friend.
Well, I mean, that's hardly a negative on you. If anything, that's a strength because that way guys are a lot more relaxed around you. And I think that it depends because if that's the energy you put out, because obviously 99 times out of 100, correct me if I'm wrong, the woman has to give the signal to the guy that she's interested, right? Because a guy can't just go be like, "Hey, pretty mom," and just like straight away, because that's just not how society works. So obviously, guys can approach you, yes, but a woman has to extend that. Okay, there's some potential How do I say this word?
Reciprocity.
Reciprocity. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. So being goofy, I don't think is a negative. Like, I mean, why do you think there's so many quote unquote geeky girls or geek girls or whatever that's so appealing? I mean, I personally, if I see a girl with dressed up like Velma and acts the exact same way, I'm like, hey,
you go for it. All right, next week I'm gonna wear it. Next week I'll wear a Velma costume.
I'll be your Scooby Doo. No problem. No problem at all. Roll. But like, yeah, I mean, like it's all down to the energy and putting yourself out there. So let's say I mean, if I'm with someone and I get the energy where she's like, okay, this is just going to be a friend thing, I'm not going to pursue that. But where if I'm with someone and the energy is open, then it's open. So and that can change. That can change.
I think he can miss signals as well, though.
Very much
right?
so. Yeah, we've all been guilty of those.
Because I definitely have had moments where I felt like I was trying to give a subtle signal, but not wanting to give it away in case they weren't attracted to me back. And those kinds of moments can be very, very easily missed, especially if the other person is autistic. And like I miss signals all the time, I'm sure.
And to be fair, men are very dumb. As a man, we are extremely dumb. So yeah,
But it goes back to that, not wanting to be rejected, right? It's like if I make it too obvious, what happens if they reject me and then like they cut me off? That happened to me before as well. Before
yeah,
Lee, um,
that's very
there,
painful.
there was another guy friend that I was hanging out with, and I had developed an attraction for him, and I was like trying to drop hints to try and suggest that he might be attracted to me because I thought that I wanted to know if he was attracted to me before offering my own kind of feelings for it. And I felt like I must have pushed things too far because he ended up just cutting things off with me entirely, like unfriended me on Facebook, and I have like no idea what happened. But at least that didn't hurt as much as when Lee did it, because at least with Lee I had an actual sexual history
Yeah,
with him at
an
that
actual
point.
history
Like,
with them. Yeah.
but what? How can you do that to somebody that you've slept with? How? It's easier to take when you haven't bonded in that way yet, because it's like, oh well, no, it's not a huge loss. I mean, it's still a loss, but not to the same extent that it might have been otherwise. Yeah. All right, good to know.
Good to know.
Good
Good
to
talk.
know
Good talk. Good talk. Good talk.
my geekiness and goofiness may not necessarily be a hindrance, but it
No,
depends. I
it
still
really doesn't. It really doesn't. Because you
very
have to remember, like a subgenre now of quote unquote geekdom, nerddom, it's become more mainstream, and it's. I mean, let's look at Marvel film for example. They're like at first like, oh, superheroes, that's for geeks, that's weird. But look at them; they became these titans, multi-billion-dollar industry. Films can even hit the billion-dollar mark, and now everyone's into it. It's not just kids or geeky guys, and geeks now are the mainstream. And so whenever someone goes, "Oh, I'm a geek, I'm not attractive," I'm like, "Odds are, bro, you put yourself in the biggest pool where now it's socially
right.
acceptable to be a geek, and that's what
It
sells."
it's not the geekiness that's making you unattractive. It's your self-perception of your value that is making you unattractive.
Very true. Very
uh,
true.
have a look at the way that you see yourself, because self-confidence is very attractive. Valuing yourself is very attractive. Um, yeah, I think that's the key difference. But what I was going to bring up was, there was this period of time, and I don't know if this is still true, but there was this period of time where a lot of female geeks
Hmm.
and nerds who like to do the cosplay, and especially very attractive ones who were like doing it just because they enjoyed it, right?
Hmm.
They got a lot of hate from certain, geek guys, not all of them because they're not all jerks, but there's a certain segment of them that would call them out and say that, they're fake geeks. They're just doing
Yeah,
it because they want
and
to
they
get
start
these guys.
testing them. Yeah,
And I
like
was
name
like,
me one character from this thing. Name me this. Blah blah blah.
why would a woman pretend to be interested in geeky stuff to get a guy when she's probably going to have an easier
Mhm.
time getting a guy who is actually confident in himself?
Yeah. I mean, like I completely understand. I've actually seen that happen. And the best way I can think of it is the person who's making that objection, they're not really offended by that person coming in. I think it's just that they're so protective of this, and they go like, "This is my safe space. This is my world. Please don't shift the balance, as it were." So maybe that's the reasoning behind it.
What balance do you feel like would be shifted? Are they worried that the woman is going to come in and take their guy friends away? Because
Maybe, maybe. I mean,
uh,
for example, it's just off the top of my head. It could be something where the dynamics in the environment changes. Where, let's say, for example, you're taking people out to go see. You have a group of friends who always go to football games together, for example. And then
hmm,
let's say if a woman joins that group, the dynamics change. We have to be a lot more conscious of it in the sense that we have to make sure that, number one, she's safe. She has access to a bathroom, a cleaning room, making sure that she's financially taken care of, like her seat's taken, food, blah 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 blah, and so we have to take into account all the different
Or
factors.
Or if she's just there as a friend, you can let her take care of herself. I
True. Yeah,
think
I know.
I think that, in my mind, what seems to be more common with the guys that have that kind of attitude is it's taking away their freedom to make misogynistic type comments. Because they can't make those. It might not be all of them, but I would say that there is a segment of guys that would be concerned about that. Because, there are misogynistic men in
Yeah,
all kinds of groups, right? It's
sure.
not limited to, as we established last week, it's not limited to just Trump supporters
No, no,
that
no,
that have that
no.
kind of mindset. Um, and this brings me to kind of another piece of news that happened this week, whereas more allegations came out against Neil Gaiman, and a lot of people have been kind of grappling with comprehending that. I don't know how many had seen about the stuff that came out last year, but there was stuff additional to that this week, and a lot of people are grappling with it because he's the kind of person that purported to be supportive towards feminism and trans people and all of that. So it's like it's hard for people to kind of see things that way. And I did not read the article because I was concerned that it was going to be too triggering for me.
Yeah.
Um, but I did read his response because it was short and I was curious.
What did you
And
say?
he denied the majority of the allegations and otherwise said that the stuff that he does remember he saw in a different kind of light. And my interpretation, because I've been on the other side of it, being on the woman's side of things, is that guys in that kind of position, just because you deny it does not mean that it didn't happen. Just because you don't remember that it didn't happen doesn't mean that it didn't happen. You probably just have this, your ego is protecting you. Your ego has uh blocked those memories from your mind because you are suffering from cognitive dissonance because you don't see yourself as that kind of person that is capable of those acts. um
I think
yeah,
the best way to look at it is if you're driving on the road and you cut someone off, just because you didn't think you're cutting them off doesn't mean you didn't cut them off.
right.
It's that simple, right?
Yeah, because people can misinterpret intention all the time, and especially if there's a power imbalance and with his level of fame and stuff that he has, there's always going to be a power imbalance.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean he's mainstream famous, so obviously
right.
he's at the top. I
So
would say top 5 to 10% of people. So yeah.
so women in that kind of those positions, if we're not expecting to be confronted with abuse, we don't necessarily process it as abuse in the moment. Sometimes we'll just um uh kind of go with it as it's happening to get through it, and then after the fact we'll process and realize actually I wasn't okay with that, but I didn't know how to say no, or I didn't know how to express my boundaries in that moment. And or they might have felt like that they were okay with it in the moment, so the guy got the impression that they were okay with it, but then as they step away from it and have some distance from it, will process it in a different way. Um, and so I can see how there might be some guys that will take that experience and be like, well, that's not how it happened in my mind. But you need to, like, if you find yourself in that kind of position, I think you need to be open to accepting that things got interpreted in a different way after the fact. Just like how I had to accept that Lee interpreted a Facebook post that I had made in a completely different way than what I intended it. We can't control how somebody else perceives our actions. And the best way forward is to believe their interpretation of events and take that on and decide what, whether you want to make any changes as a result.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, though, we're the heroes of our story, aren't we? We're the protagonists. So obviously, we like to believe, and I'm very guilty of this, that we're the best version of ourselves. And that always necessarily isn't always the case. But as long as you can see down the line, hopefully not too long, but if you can see where maybe you can be improved upon, then that's part of the journey. But I mean, obviously, you have to believe in yourself that yes, you are the protagonist of your story, which is true as well. But you're not the perfect protagonist. You're very much the growing hero, and that's the best way to describe it. So, unfortunately, most people, we do tend to think that literally the world revolves around them. So
Yeah,
it's a fine line. It's a very fine line.
I'm not the one that needs to change. The other person's the one that needs to change. But you can't. How can you expect another person to change if you're not also willing to change?
Right.
That's how I see it. I was like, no, there are two people in this situation, at least two people in this situation, and I think you need to be both be willing to accept the other person's perspective on the situation, to learn from it, and then adapt to it, and then come to some kind of compromise. Because if you don't do that, that's where that imbalance comes in, and one of you ends up resenting the other one, because you didn't feel like your needs were heard or your perspective was heard, and you just had to accept the other person's.
Yeah, and you might not feel like that today. You might not feel like that tomorrow, but that's going to grow, and down the line, that's just going to, and it's going to consume you until the day where you look at the person with nothing but resentment.
Oh yeah,
that's horrible. Yeah.
Hello, my marriage. Yeah, there was a lot. There was probably a lot of that from both sides. I feel like.
Yeah, it takes to the tango for sure.
I'm pretty sure my ex-husband felt like he, accepted a lot of things that he didn't want to accept from me as well. So, because he didn't speak up about what he was actually feeling in the moment. So, it takes two.
Yeah, and to be fair, if you don't communicate your feelings, then you've got nothing to complain about. Because even though, let's say you say, oh, so and so was domineering, or I couldn't speak up, I'm like, it takes two to tango, my friend. I know there's in some situations there is an imbalance, whether it's for whatever reason. But if you don't express your feelings, you can't hide behind that. You can't say, oh, I couldn't do X, Y, Z. I'm like, could.
Yeah, I've definitely gotten to a better place of trying to accept that if somebody doesn't tell me how they're feeling, then I shouldn't have to try and guess at how they're feeling and behave and walk on eggshells because I don't know how they're feeling.
We're not X-Men. We
no,
can't read minds.
We cannot read minds. So it was literally a message that I sent to Lee at one point. It was like, I'm not Professor X.
Yeah.
I can't read
I'm
your
not Charles Xavier. And just have a picture of you just doing this.
Yeah. Genuinely wrote that in a message to him at one point when he had ghosted me. I was like, I can't read your mind. I think it was in the message that I sent him after he'd ghosted me, right? So he has a couple of different Instagram accounts. One of them is his personal account. One of them is a business account that he runs. Neither of them were following me on Instagram. But after he ghosted me last year, his business account started following me on Instagram. And I was like, what the fuck is that about? Because I hadn't like tried to reach out to him for a while, and like, so I think that was what led to me writing that. I can't read your mind. Like, what is that about? Tell me. I can't. I'm not Professor Xavier.
I mean, that's the thing. If it's his business account, it just sounds like there's just a curiosity, and it's okay. It's okay. I mean, like, to be fair, like I can understand that would tick you a fair amount. But at the end of the day, though, like I said, I always go back to this. You can't control other people if they want to. Yeah. So just take it on the chin and just live your life.
It's just, I just my mind wants to know answers. I think it's the writer in me. I want to know what people's motivations are, what causes them to behave in different ways. It helps me be a better writer because like I like to write about people's motivations. I think that's one of the things that is a strength for me in my memoir, because I write about as much of my interpretation of his perspective of things as I could. Because I want to understand, like, why would you do something like that when you're not talking to me? That makes no sense. Like, there's like, was it actually him? Does somebody else also have access to controlling this account, and that person like followed me? Like, what is going on?
Well, see, that's a tricky bit though, because as writers, we control the story, we control the universe, we control the characters, even though some of them we're nothing at all like them, but we are effectively the puppet masters. We create this world. But unfortunately, with life, as I said, all we can create is literally this.
Yeah.
So yeah, and unfortunately, people are confusing. People don't make sense. People will surprise you in a good and a bad way.
And people don't understand their own motivations because they haven't reflected on their experiences themselves. Like, they will tell themselves things to convince themselves of a decision that they've already made.
Sure.
So like, for example, one of the things, during the final conversation that I had with Lee, one of the things is that he said was like, I'd already processed all of this stuff and figured out that we weren't compatible and we just weren't meant to be. And I accepted it in the moment that was his decision. Like, I was going to be moving on with that, but in my mind I was also thinking, you just fucking, that's a cop out. It's a fucking excuse because you don't want to, you're afraid, you don't want to step up, and you're afraid of getting hurt. Like, that's what was going on in my mind through all of that. But at the end of the day, still had to accept his decision. So I didn't say any of that to him, but I certainly thought about it afterwards.
Yeah, I think that's completely fair.
And and so I have like one major disclaimer at the beginning of my memoir is like, this is my interpretation of events. He is going to have, like, the other people in the story are going to remember things differently, interpret things differently. So, take that on board of like, I'm not saying this is the one true version of events. This was my experience. This is how I interpreted it. And everyone else who is part of this story will have their different perspective on how things went down.
I think, like, I actually remember saying this in class once when I was in the US. I was like, think of it like from a writer's perspective. You have two characters at a petrol station. One person's pumping gas, one person's inside, and a robber comes into the store and holds the cashier at gunpoint. The person inside obviously has one perspective. The person outside looking in has a different perspective because of what they see in the moment.
Yeah.
And it's the same principle. That's all it is.
Yeah, because we all have our own backgrounds and traumas and experiences that kind of inform our interpretation of events as well. Yeah, there's a lot of that. How do we interpret this event? Well, based on my past experiences, X, Y, and Z means that this thing must be true, which may not be remotely true, but that's how we interpret it. And because we have our our defenses get up when we're scared, and we will react in a particular way based on
fight or flight.
Fight or flight, fawn or freeze. responses. So I've done all of those things in different circumstances.
You're only human.
Yeah. All right, I'm gonna bring up some more comments. It's been I haven't even because I'm still like at the point where I'm not like didn't catch up yet. So
Yeah, let's go through some
yeah, I think
all
it's
of Frank's comments. Yeah.
this one. No chemistry means they aren't sparking unconscious healing needs. That means more compatible long term.
I don't know, because for me, no chemistry means that everything's all surface level,
Mm.
where you think, okay, like there's if you like what you see, that's great, but then after that initial engagement, there's no reason for you guys to stick around, and you're just like, all right, cool.
You know,
So
I watched a video that came up on my Facebook not long before this stream started, and it was this woman was talking about how Gen Z women are so afraid of relationships nowadays because of the things that people talk about with different responses and things and like attachment styles and blah blah blah, and it is talked about as like chemistry, like this thing that I'm going to bring up my dad's comment again. This idea that chemistry means that it's provoking an unconscious attachment to something from your childhood trauma that you need to resolve. And so this woman on this video was like, that may not be true. Maybe it's holding you. If you feel like having chemistry with somebody is a red flag, it could be harming you from having an actual healthy relationship. Because, I think even if it is triggering something in, a childhood wound that you need to heal, that healing is going to happen within a relationship. I mean, both people have to, be able to self-reflect and be aware of their triggers and talk about them so they can work through them together. But that's how that healing happens. And I think that having that chemistry is important. But I'm not going to deny that there aren't, or I'm not going to deny that there are situations where you will be triggered by any of the chemistry is because of those triggering things and you need to get out of the situation, because that happens too. But I don't think
yeah,
it's
I mean, like if you're with someone who's very obviously toxic, and you're still, I mean, yeah, I mean, like I'm not gonna lie, like if I see a very, I think aggressives are the wrong term, but if I see a woman who's very proactive and very outspoken and very masculine in her energy, I kind of like that. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, like I like a woman who takes charge, because 99.9% of the time, that's my role. So if I see that being flipped, I'm like, oh, this
interesting.
intrigues me. And and this just goes down to the whole thing that's kind of growing now in subculture, where guys aren't calling their girlfriends babe anymore; they're calling them mummy, and I personally hate that. I really don't like that.
That's so icky.
But yeah, but a lot of girls, women, I'd say now that they're calling their guy friends dad or daddy, or and like they're encouraging them where it's no longer babe, darling, sweetheart, it's mummy. And it's just become a thing now where, like, yeah, it's they want that kind of, some of them want that kind of dominance, and to each their own. Not for me, because like when I think mummy, I think of my mom, like, and I'm just like, no.
I couldn't. My ex-husband liked being called daddy, and that was not something I could do. But there were moments where I felt like he wanted me to be his mother, not necessarily mothering him, but he wanted me to be his mother, as in behave in the same kinds of way, as in like doing all of the household chores and cooking and cleaning, like prioritizing the family above everything else, that side of things. But then there were times where I felt like I needed to teach him in the way that a mother would teach a child about like boundaries and respect. and things like that. And that's not good for a relationship dynamic. You
No.
need to have that like equal footing, equal respect for each other.
Yeah.
And yeah, but I think I think pretty much most people in the world, at least, have childhood trauma. The extent of the childhood trauma will vary, but we all have, childhood wounds that we are looking to heal within our relationships. And uh, not very many people are actually self-aware of what those wounds are and what they're looking for, and then it can come out in negative ways in the relationship that harms the relationship because
Mm.
you're not like willing to look within to figure those things out. There's so many people that is like, well, this is just how I am. There's nothing I can do to change who I am. My ex-husband had that kind of
I'm
attitude.
Popeye. Like there's a Popeye syndrome. I am, and I am. So yeah,
I am what I am.
I am what I am.
Yeah. But that's why I like the growth mindset, right? Always being aware that there are ways that you can improve in the future. Maybe it's too hard for you to do in the moment, but as you have time, like it's very hard for me to react in the moment, not from a defensive place. But after I've had time to process what happened, then I can reflect on how I could have done things better and try to do things better in the future. But that slowing things down in the moment is very hard to do. Very hard to do.
Bullet time is very, very difficult to achieve. Yeah.
Oh yes. Oh yes. Okay. All right, I think this is where we're up to now. Healing fears comes from putting oneself through willingly facing your
Facing your
fears.
fears.
Willingly is important, according to Jordan Peterson. And then he says, I willingly faced Lee again. Exactly. And I've talked about this on previous streams as well. I was terrified of facing him again,
But you did it.
and I still went through it with it anyway because that was what I needed to do.
Yeah.
Because having answers, any kind of answer, was better than having no answer. And I needed to risk. He meant that much to me that I was willing to take that risk, as painful as it was, to know there's a higher chance of him not wanting to communicate with me. All right, here we go. Sharad, you make a good point about social media. My dad's point about no chemistry means less chance there is trauma issues underlying the unconscious attraction. I also am still big on no sex before marriage.
Yeah, I think that just goes down to the generational values, right? Because as you said, like we're different from our parents. I'm sure your kids have different values to you,
Mm-hmm.
and it's tricky because each generation onto their own. As a society, we are evolving. All we can do is maybe guide, if you want to assume that role, guide the next generation as to how they want to go about themselves in the world. But things are changing. I mean, like society. I mean, if you're going to look at just quote unquote the evils of the previous generations, we can talk about racial segregation, women's suffrage, and I think we can all agree that we're evolving as a society for better or for worse. I think that obviously racially and gender inequality has definitely taken huge strides in the last two generations. Of course, they have, but at the same time, I think we're also losing that kind of um, family dynamics that I think that we kind of lost in the 90s. Like,
Oh yeah.
And a lot of people are more orientated on their careers, which is, I mean, I'm doing that. I'm sure a lot of people are doing that too, where the career comes first.
Mm-hmm.
And as a result, there's less kids being born. Marriages are plummeting in terms of success rate. So yeah, I mean, it's there's definitely pros and cons to anything.
Yeah, I've seen a few videos recently with women talking about this idea of holding off having sex because of the negative impact that it's had on relationships. I mean, that's where I'm at now as well. I'm not no sex until marriage kind of mindset, but I do feel like I've reached a point of I don't want to sleep with someone until I know that they want to have a committed long-term relationship with me.
Fair enough.
Because of how I've been hurt by being in a situationship, and I wanted something serious and it didn't turn into something serious, and like having the pain of that. But I'm not going to close myself off to any kind of connection just because I don't want to feel this pain again. I just know what my like barrier of entry is now, I guess.
Sure.
And
I think we're all different. I mean, like for me, I agree that I do think that sex is very important, but at the same time, compatibility is is just as important. I mean, I remember like my freshman roommate Neil. He told me something really interesting. He was like, you could meet with someone, you can have the same values, you guys like have an amazing conversation, everything's all the same, and it's the perfect yin and yang, and this is this perfect synergy. But what happens if you guys spend your first night together and your second night together and the third night together and it's god awful, there's zero chemistry, and it's important because if you think about it, I mean, I don't mean that sex should be the number one priority, but it is important. If there's no compatibility there, there's going to be an issue.
And I think so in my situation, like I said, I wouldn't have sex with someone until I know that they're looking for a long-term commitment with me as well. But if then we had sex and it had that kind of situation, I think we'd be both on the same page as like, yeah, a long-term relationship is not going to work for us if we can't have the sexual chemistry as well.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't have formed the kind of attachment that normally comes from a sexual connection if that is what your sexual chemistry is like. So you would be able to detach from that situation anyway, and hopefully convert your relationship to friendship because clearly you still get along with everything else, but if you don't have that component, it's like, all right. Yeah, I think that's where I would be at with it if that happened to me. Who knows if the guy would be on the same page? I don't know.
Which is why communication is key.
Cannot control that sort of thing. But yeah, that upfront honesty is so important. All right, next comment here from my dad. Men are dumb unless we aren't involved. Very good advice when you're not in the middle of the situation.
Correct.
So I pick subtle messages in movies all the time, but never see it when it happens to me. Oh,
Frank, you're not alone.
I think this might have been in response to when we were talking about the picking up on hints of whether or not somebody is interested in you. I'm very good at noticing when somebody else is attracted to another person. Shit at recognizing when someone is attracted to me.
I mean, it's simple Sherlock Holmes syndrome. It's like you're a complete alpha detective everywhere, but when it's happening to you, you're like, huh? What?
Yeah.
That's extraordinarily normal. I think it's very human.
Yeah. I remember saying to like at least one of my friends, but maybe a couple of friends, I'll notice like an uptick of comments from somebody of the opposite gender, like on their, social media or whatever. And I was like, I bet this person has a thing for you. And they'll be like, no. And then like later on they may be like, okay, you were right. But can I tell if somebody is attracted to me? Very, very rarely.
I mean, like that's the thing. I mean, I think for it can be tricky because that obviously the telltale signs are undeniable, and those are thankfully some things that we optically we can see. But obviously, there are times where we misinterpret things. Where, like for example, like if a woman maintains eye contact with you, smiles, and is very, very close physical distance to you, you might think, oh, this person might have a romantic or sexual interest in me. But that doesn't mean that's the case. It could be she's just being friendly. That's just who she is. You're just extraordinarily charming, but she doesn't see you that way. So
Maybe
yeah,
she's just trying to manipulate a drink out of you.
has happened many times. So yeah, I mean that became very very obvious when I was in the US, where after a while I was like, is this person just? And to be fair, I've had friends, lovely women, who have told me like flat out, oh, I don't pay for drinks on nights out. I was like,
That is
what do you mean? Yeah.
that is mind blowing to me. Like
Hmm.
that's just not my experience at all.
Yep. And to be fair, like I do remember this, and I'll never stop laughing. I can't remember the person off the top of my head. I wish I could tell you, but safe to say, it's a friend of mine, lovely girl, and she had this thing where she goes, "Oh yeah, I don't even take my wallet out with me. I take my phone, my ID, because there's no point." And I remember just looking at her and just being like, okay. And and we were on a night out, and we're having a good time. And I remember she very playfully looked at me and she went, "So, you're gonna get me a drink?" And I remember almost snapping my neck because of how quickly I turned. I just went, "Fuck no!" And I just like walked off. And it was the funniest thing because yeah, I mean, it just
For
came full
real.
circle. Yeah,
I honestly I find that sort of expectation from not all women are like that, but the women who do think like that is I find it appalling
hmm,
that is their attitude. Like you deserve special treatment from men just because you can or
you're
just
a
because
woman.
you're
Yeah,
attractive or whatever. Like I would never have that expectation. Now,
yeah,
granted,
because if
maybe I would feel differently if I had guys hitting me on me left, right, and center. I don't know, but like that's not my experience. So I'm just like that
it's
seems
tricky because if you're operating on that mindset, then you should have that. You should also have the expectation that if you accept a drink from a man, then you owe him something in return. You know, what I mean, if we're operating on that mindset, so that's equally as damaging.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, tricky.
Not great. My dad's got an example of his his circumstances. So, example: I have found out later a nude girl under her coat on a date to a movie at a drive-in must have signaled, but nothing happened.
Oh,
I
Frank,
found out later from another source.
that's hilarious. That's hilarious. You poor man. I'll put it this way. I'm sure you laugh about it now, don't you, Frank? But oh, it's just that
I,
happens to the best of us.
I'm trying to think if I've had any like really obvious situations like that I've like tried to.
I can think.
I don't think I've
I
been
can
that obvious.
I can think of one off the top of my head. Like I was in Hull in England, and I threw a house party, and I had seven other roommates. It was a big house, 3-story house, and one of my friends. She was like, "Oh, I'm gonna go." I remember like we were all of us were quite drunk, and we're all. I think we were in the living room in the front, and I remember she whispered to me, "Oh, I'm gonna go wait for you in your room." And I just very out loud, I was like, "Why do you want to go to my room? What are you talking about?" And I remember like all the guys burst out laughing, and I remember her just going like, "Oh my god!" And I couldn't put two and two together until literally the next day. I remember I was just whatever, and I just went, "Oh my god!" That's when it really hit me, and yeah. I mean, she's like, "Oh, I'll go wait for you." I'm like, "What the fuck for? Everyone's all here." So
Wow.
yeah, yeah.
I don't think I've had any of those kinds of missed opportunities where somebody has uh kind of insinuated that they wanted to do something with me and I've been clueless but then found out after the fact. Like it might have happened but I haven't like learned about it later.
Mhm.
um because it was really not and I've definitely not had like obvious like what should have been obvious situations like that I figured it out after the fact. But yeah, I don't know. There must have been
There
situations
must have
like
been.
that, right? There must have been situations like that. Because I've had, people I went to high school with have come and um apologize to the way that they treated me in high school for different things. But I had one who, years after we finished high school, just messaged me on Facebook. We'd been friends on Facebook for a while, but she just, messaged me. It was like, I always, and this was someone who was like a little bit mean to me in high school, but she came out and told me that she really respected how I was someone that didn't like go with what was popular. I wasn't someone who went with what was popular. I just kind of did my own thing, and so I think she was like a little bit jealous of that, and I just found that really interesting. Like, you have no idea sometimes what people's interpretations or impressions are of you.
It's always the idea that you can't have. I mean, you want what you can't have. That the most obvious one is. Have you ever read or seen The Count of Monte Cristo?
Yeah, but it's been a long time.
Right. Yeah. And so basically, it's the person who betrayed the protagonist. He had everything in his life. He had everything, and the protagonist by no means had uh, a strong financial background or career, but he had something that the villain didn't have, and that drove him nuts. And
Mm-hmm.
it's the same thing. It's like if it can be as simple as it's you have seemingly everything, but there's that one thing you just can't seem to get, and you see someone else have it, and that can instantly twist you. So it's human.
Yeah.
Mm.
All right, next comment from my dad. Here we go. Hopefully, we're eventually going to get to the end of my not recognizing my problem. Wait, I'm going to read it from his perspective. You're
Go for it.
not recognizing you are the problem. Gets into a book. This is what happens when he doesn't put apostrophes in the correct place.
It's all right, Frank.
Gets into a book with, that's my reading comprehension. A book that my mum tried to get him to understand. It was called "Why Does This Keep Happening to Me?" The common denominator is me. It took me a while. Oh, that was going back to my comment about that I was kind of making about Lee, but also generalizing of if you notice there's a pattern in your life, then you're the problem.
Yeah.
It's
like that little joke where someone goes, "Oh, if you don't know an asshole in your life, odds are you're the asshole."
You're the asshole. Yeah.
You're the asshole.
So, as my dad says, it was easier to blame others than take responsibility. Exactly like my ex-husband. So clearly, I was no. I think I was, acting out my childhood wounds in that relationship, or trying to find some answers there in some way. That healing can happen with help and good communication skills. If a couple gets counseling before marriage, it could heal. Usually it just brings up old patterns. Yeah, that brings up so someone that I like who keeps popping up in my Facebook feed. I don't even follow him, but his videos keep popping up in my feed. Is Lewis Howes, and he has a podcast and stuff. But I just watch him on Facebook, and he's talked about how with his current partner that he has, like one of his things was that he one of the agreements that he made with her at the very beginning on, before like they chose to have a committed relationship, was let's go and do therapy together.
Nice.
And I think that and that's something that would have been so foreign to me in the past. My ex-husband did not believe in therapy, so that wouldn't have been an option. But I do like that idea of being willing to seek help together before things get bad, so that that you have like that grounding as a baseline, right?
Right.
Yeah, I think that's but not there's a lot of people out there who don't think that therapy is helpful. Harville Hendricks and wife specializes in this, called imago therapy. I've heard of imago, but I don't remember what it means. So clearly I've not watched a lot of content on that particular topic.
Interesting.
My dad will probably add something to it in the chat. So my dad said, disagree. My first partner was outside of marriage, but learned the importance of no sex before. So yeah, my dad didn't have that perspective of no sex before marriage until after he'd had the experience.
That's interesting.
Yeah. There is a young married couple who waited and developed good communication. Their first night together, they talked and listened to one another's needs. In the bedroom, I suppose.
Yeah.
What do you need?
Who is
right
your
now?
daddy and what does he do? Yeah.
I'm glad nothing happened too complicated to explain here.
I hear
Probably
you.
the nude under the
Yeah.
coat. Yeah. I have a nude woman stand over. Dad, this is. I don't need to hear any more situations. This is where I'm going to draw the line with you, Dad. I don't need to hear any more
Frank's a
situations
player.
where there were nude women in your presence. That's not something I want to hear about. You see me practicing me expressing my boundaries. If it comes up again, I'm not going to bring up those comments if he does. Like I don't need to know.
That's funny.
It's too close to sex for me. I mean, I know there are, people who practice nudism, which is not about sexual stuff, but to me, it's too closely related, and so I kind of it's too linked to me, so it's part of my boundaries of things I don't want to hear about. You know what?
Not today, Satan. Not today.
not today. Sharad, I did not yet answer this question.
Do you want to have
Which
a go?
was, what's at least one thing you want more of in your life? I want more genuine connections, which is this is why I'm doing this live stream, because this is what I want more of. So I'm actively pursuing more of those genuine connections, that deep connections, getting vulnerable with people, but still want more of that. I want more of that. And
Well, I mean, it's all about the baby steps, and as you said, you're being proactive, which is good. Obviously, like it's all the same. Like, oh, I won $1 million next year, but I'm just going to be sitting my ass on my couch all the entire time. You're being proactive about it, so that's good.
Yeah, it's good practice for me, because that's something that I want in a romantic relationship. And I hope that I can find someone that can provide it for me. But like, and with me, I should say, because it's a
two-way street.
It's a two-way street. We both have to be working together to form that kind of connection. But I think the more I can practice it with friends, I hope that it'll translate more, that I can speak up about all of those experiences in a relationship, so that I'm less afraid of things not working out if it gets to a point of things not working out. Because like I said earlier, it's like, if you can't have the relationship you want if you're not willing to put in the risk of losing it.
Yeah, that's very, very poetic of you.
Yeah. And then the tangible sense, I would just love to have more space in my house, because I'm pretty sure I have more Lego than what I can fit on display if I was to build all of the sets that I have. So that's my tangible thing.
Or what you can do, and to be fair, I've been thinking of this too. I've been thinking about Actually, I was thinking about what you were saying the other day about Lego, and I was actually thinking about buying some of my own. And I had the same thought rather that where the fuck am I going to put everything? And I thought, like, let's make use of this space. And a lot of people use, I'm sure you probably do something similar, hanging walls or just some floating shelves, or the floating shelves. That's what hanging walls, floating shelves.
Yeah.
And that's probably, or just use whatever space you can get, and that's probably a good thing.
Yeah, I definitely have considered getting some floating shelf space somewhere. I've not gone to that extent yet, and it'll be a while probably before I get it, because I did buy some additional shelves, and they're not full yet. But it will reach a point. It will reach a point where they are full, and I have run out of space, and I will need to do something about it. But you know, I've already bought like additional shelves. I would love to get my room to a point where it's tidy enough where I can actually take photos of how amazing it looks with all the Lego in my room. But right now it's not in a condition where I feel like I can do that.
It's okay. It's a work in progress.
It is a work in progress. I am not the tiny person that my ex-husband wanted to be, and that was a point of contention in our relationship, and one of the reasons that it is a good thing that we are no longer together. I'm looking at the time now, and you know, we've been going for 3 hours, already. So how are you feeling? Do you feel like, you know, we're at a good
we're at a good time. I need to go have a quick bite and then carry on with my work. But yeah, thank you. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you for.
Yeah, it's a lot of back and forth, which is good.
We were able to keep going for 3 hours, just the two of us, without Mike.
And with with one or two cards, if that.
Yeah,
so that's amazing.
Just two cards. That was
just
all we
two
had.
Cards.
Two
that's
cards
amazing.
And things that came up, and then the chat comments from my dad, which
awesome.
is amazing.
I think because now also we're getting into the swing of things and we're more used to it. So definitely.
Yeah. We have things that are on our mind that we're just like, well, dive into that. What's going on? What the fuck is with this go with the flow bullshit? So anyone who is joining and watching after the fact, thank you so much for tuning in and watching the whole show. I usually get at least one person who watches all the way through to the end after the fact. So thank you so much. Feel free to leave a comment on the video. Let us know what you thought, what you liked, and ask us a question that we can ask in the next live stream.
Like and subscribe. That's another big one.
Like and subscribe.
Click on the notification bell.
Click the notification bell. Then you'll find out when we're live, and then you can ask us the questions live. Check my channel pages to find out when the next stream is going to be, because I generally put it up in advance, at least 5 or 6 days in advance, unless it's like short notice. But should be fine. We'll hopefully next week we'll have an additional person. I'll check in with Mike to see if he can join us again. But I have a roster of other people who are interested. It's just whether or not they're available to join.
Bring them on. Why not? Bring them on.
I asked a bunch of other people about that today, and nobody else was available on short notice.
Next time. Who knows?
Yeah, but maybe in a couple of weeks during Chinese New Year, Puppy Zach said that he might be available then.
Yeah, Zach's great.
So we will see. So I hope you enjoyed the show, and follow for more, and the social media stuff as well. TikTok is supposedly going to be banned in the US in a few days, but I read an article today that said if you already have TikTok downloaded on your phone, you're still going to be able to use TikTok for a while. I'm like, yeah, that's what I thought. So very interesting. Okay, my dad has another couple of comments before we go. So my dad does acknowledge that I have a boundary there, and he should have been more sensitive.
You're fine, Frank.
Thinking too much about life lessons. I was never a player. Sometimes things you don't want to happen as a temptation. Yep, I get it, but I appreciate that my dad is able to respect my boundaries and take that on board. That is how to have a healthier parent-child dynamic. So
Yes.
hopefully that's a lesson for anyone watching as well.
That's awesome.
All right. Until next time, enjoy the rest of your week, and yeah, leave some comments. Let us
Yes.
know. Let us know
Engage.
what you want us to talk about.